somehow or somewhat related to epistemology and asks the question, what is real? So other things that are real, only the things that can be touched and measured. Sure, is it something that can be touched and measured? So this is somehow a conflict between behaviorism and existentialism. Now, itong tatlong tools na ito, no, ito yung ginagamit ng mga philosophers to craft the different types of philosophy. Now, these philosophies, as nature, as it is, pinasok ito ngayon sa education system. Or sabihin natin na nag-base dito yung education structure natin, kagaya ng pinag-usapan natin kanina, no, that philosophy is one of the four cornerstones of curriculum or of the educational system. Okay. So, what is the purpose of education? So, according to Hilda Taba in 1962, it talks about transmission of cultural heritage. It's knowledge transfer from the existing society, di ba? And also, based on the reflections of based on the reflections of the history. Kung ano yung nararanasan ng mga philosophers during that time, no, they translate it into to become a philosophy, and then definitely transmit it to education system. Okay? Next is transform the culture and maximize human potential. The purpose of education, again, is the purpose of education is to transmit cultural heritage, transform the culture, but take note, no, transforming culture is not synonymous to changing the culture. Transforming meaning nandun pa rin yung identity ng kultura, but we try to make it rich, more rich, no? And of course, maximize human potential. Kaya nga tayo nag-aaral, di ba? The purpose of education is to study, and at the end of the day, we are expected to create knowledge to contribute to the body of knowledge. Okay? To maximize or optimize the human potentials. Now, these education systems no have 7 cardinal principles. So, Commission or Reorganization of Secondary Education in 1918. This is in international, no? This is not in the Philippines. No? Ito yung mga kinoconsider natin. The first one is health. The second one is command of fundamental processes, worth home membership, vocational competence, citizenship, worthy use of leisure time, and ethical character. All this has to be present in the educational system. So, not as a subject only, no, but it should be experienced this should be experienced sa loob ng ng educational system in general. Okay, now allow me to discuss to you several isms, okay, or philosophies that has been applied to the educational system. The first one is essentialism. Talakay na natin kanina, di ba? The contents of essentialism, of the philosophy essentialism, are the ones or forms of knowledge that are important, essential. Essentialism is a conservative view of curriculum that holds school responsible for the most immediately needed instructions. And I also stressed out kanina, no, yung 3 R's. Ano yung 3 R's ng essentialism? We have reading, writing, and arithmetic. These 3 fundamental information or fundamental knowledge is essential in order to move forward in education. Kasi if you cannot read, write, and you're not well versed with reading, writing, and arithmetic, you cannot move forward in other philosophies. That's the principle of essentialism. Kaya very conservative ang approach sa essentialism. Pansinin ninyo, medyo strict yung mga language teachers, especially sa lower years, no, mga math teachers, and reading and writing and counting. Kailangan kailangan most of the time, no, corporal yung approach ng mga teachers, no. But again, I have nothing against it naman. Depende pa rin naman 'yon. Essentialism also avoids some of the ways inherent with experimentalism. Kasi di ba when we talk about experimentalism, you are exploring different ventures, while essentialism does not give importance to that, because essentialism, if you are an essentialist teacher, why would you would consider it as a waste of time, so form of waste of time. But it can become a conservative, but it can become so conservative that it fails to truly educate. Now, since mm, okay lang po ang pagiging conservative na approach ng education. But if you are too conservative, now take note that education is progressive today. Hindi na traditional ang view natin no sa sorry. Hindi na traditional ang view natin sa education. So, we see here that no what do you call this, if you are too conservative and you stick to the traditional view of education, therefore hindi ka makakasabay sa trends ng education. No, in order for the philosophies of education to survive, somehow you have to adapt pa rin naman. So what is the emphasis of essentialism? So kapag dumating sa questions sa board exam, sa let questions, no, here are some key terms or keywords that you have to take note on the emphasis of essentialism. So traditional education, that's one of the natures of essentialism. Development of the mind, focused nga ito sa cognitive level, di ba? Stressed on essential informations. Okay? The core curriculum, which are the three R's. Reality is based on the physical world, and teacher-directed learning, because reading and writing and counting numbers, these forms of knowledge are better taught, no, na teacher ang magpo-process nung reading comprehension, magpo-process nung writing skills, at magpo-process nung counting skills ng bata. Okay? Again, there's a phase in our education wherein essentialism is very important talaga, primarily on the first three R's nga natin, no? Next is what would essentialists teach, no? Reading, spelling, language arts, mathematics, this is world history, Philippines or world history, and no vocational education. So they do not stress on vocational or skill activities, no. Although essentialism is focused on cognitive level na kailangan. But there's another approach of essentialism, wherein the essential house chores, or somehow, no, sinasabi na din natin na yung TVL or TLE or HE subjects, these are essentialism fields of knowledge, no, na that would fall under essentialism. Okay? Now, how essentialists would evaluate? Of course, dahil traditional ang approach nito, standardized tests, essay for writing, oral speech or reading for, of course, reading, and uh, recital counting, no. Okay. So that's the usual approach nila, criterion reference tests, not as likely to require portfolios. Testing nila, writing test, multiple choices, true or false, binary choices, and matching type. Essentialism sa classroom management naman, using only textbook. Of course, no, may module na sinusunod yan. Seated by row ang approach, teacher lecture and students listen. That's for, again, dun sa mga again, this is a little bit of conservative and teacher-centered, ika nga. Punishment, attempted behaviors, but without expertise. So, ang orientation skill nito, teach the basic civilized skills, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic, or reading, spelling, and measuring. Limited education's responsibility is to let industry and industry teach vocational subjects. So, an essentialist teacher, no, will have a little bit of less regard to the tech voc programs or tech voc subjects. Future orientation nito, they are training their students in order to all students will remember the basic information. Yun talaga, 3 R's, no? Kasi you cannot move forward nga in a higher forms of knowledge if you cannot read, if you cannot write, and if you cannot count. All students will learn how to pass the tests. Kasi yun yung aim ng, yun yung orientation ng essentialism eh. No, you have to learn how to read, write, and count for you to pass the exams. And that's it. That's the essentialism. Okay. Now let's go to experimentalism. This is a little bit of kalaban no ng essentialism. So experimentalism, this is associated with a very broad but a shallow curriculum, many electives, few required subjects. Bakit madami ang electives? No? Because they allow the students to select which program they want to take. Experimentalism is friendly to educational research and many new ideas come from it. Okay? But then again, experimentalism can be wasteful of resources and time. Yun din yung principle if you are an essentialist teacher, no, you would see that experimentalism would just be a little bit of waste of time if you cannot master the principles of on essentialism. Now, ito yung nagiging problema sa mga bata ngayon that they want to pursue they want to practice experimentalism no as a philosophy of education while wala naman talaga sila pang alam tungkol sa field. Say for example, nagbigay ka ng activity sa mga bata na basahin, hindi nila ito binasa. Okay, now, nagpa-recitation si teacher, nagbibigay lang siya ng opinion niya, hindi ayon doon sa binasa niya. He or the student is just experimenting what or how will the teacher respond on his or her recitation. So that's a little bit of waste, no? Paano pag na-call out ng teacher that you did not read it? Kaya mahalaga pa rin po, no? What I'm trying to say is, mahalaga pa rin that you acknowledge the different isms before you apply it. Okay? So don't jump right into experimentalism nang hindi ka pa familiar with essentialism. Okay? It can also fail to follow through because, example, if you are an experimentalist teacher, you deviate from the curriculum and tried another approach on your students tapos hindi nag-work out, sinong na-sacrifice? No, those are your students. Now, accommodate fads too easily. Experimentalist teachers like to tinker or experiment. This is good, no? For us in sciences, this is good. But then again, we cannot risk the expected content and outcomes of our students just because we want to experiment. Okay? They don't like to leave things the same all the time. They want to try new things. Okay. Now, sa classroom management, don't like assertive discipline. Medyo liberal ang experimentalist teacher. Prefer more constructive approach such as discipline with dignity. And what would experimentalists teach? Everything or anything that had any relationship to the student's possible future or anything that is related to the subject. So yun yung ituturo ng experimentalist teacher. Even if he or she will deviate from the plan, no existing plan, susubukan niya pa rin ma-hit yung expected outcome no while trying a new approach or new way of teaching. Yun nga lang, no, delikado nga iyon kasi sabihin natin that you tried something new but it did not work out, it is not effective. What happened? You just wasted the time of your students, your teaching time, your study time, nasayang lang nang hindi naman pala effective yung approach. Has been accused of trying to do the home's job or the has been accused of trying to do the home's job. So this is also a good way sa amin sa sciences, no. May tinatawag kami ngayon during this online pandemic, we are trying to innovate different approaches in laboratories, no. Like kitchen chemistry or garden chemistry, no, or garden science. So these are house activities, household chores or household activities that can be associated to education. Ang focus naman nito is when essentialism or perennialism have been in power for so long, school programs have become stagnant. So, ayun lang. Essentialism, later pag-usapan natin ang perennialism. I'm saying kanina, no? Essentialism is good. It's good at some extent. But if it is the prevailing philosophy for so long, definitely magkakaroon ng stagnation ng content. Okay? When schools has become all work and no play, kailangan din ng experimentalism nun kasi namamatay yung spirit ng school when tradition methods have become ineffective. So dito papasok yung experimentalism. Now let's go to perennialism. Perennialism reveres to the experiences of the teachers who have been there, heavy oriented on the past, kagaya ng sinabi natin kanina. Ang isa sa mga subjects na ang nature niya ay perennialism ay history, kasama na din doon ang literature. Ibig sabihin nito, yung contents nila ay records. It is not, it cannot be revised nor it cannot be changed. Instead, naaaral natin itong mga to. So we have literature, we have history, no, we have writings that we study. Great books, ika nga. The perennialists like to teach time-honored curricula, including classics such as Plato and Aristotle. Yung mga tinuturo ng mga perennialists, no, mga never dying principles and philosophies ng mga philosophers and poets. And they don't like change. Although kasama naman sa mga writings, no, that the only constant in this world is change, but perennialists do not really adapt well on when it comes to changes. Classroom management nila, assign seats in row. Strict sila, similar with essentialism na medyo conservative, not necessarily expert, with punishment and reward because they just focus on the content. Sets up classroom rules kasi nga, again, they reflect on what happened in the past. So because of what happened in the past, they tend to teach contents during the golden age, during the golden age in Hellenistic era. Okay. Evaluation method, teacher-made tests ito, standardized tests. Memory works, mind is a muscle. Bakit memory works? Tandaan natin ang tinuturo ay anong sabi natin kanina na na isa sa mga major principles or philosophies ay uh, ano po?
Ano?
Hello po. Sinabi natin kanina, no, that isa sa mga subjects na ang nature niya ay rote memory or memorization. Thank you very much, no, Corpus. Yes, history, no. So perennial history, ang philosophy behind philosophy behind perennialism is history. So, yon kaya memory work or memorization ang evaluation method niya, and spelling bees, of course. Ang testing approach is paper pencil tests kagaya ng essentialism. Ito ay conservative. Next is recitation and also standardized tests. Okay. Ang orientation nito ay self-contained knowledge. Ibig sabihin, kung ano lang yung existing knowledge, yung record ng history or record ng book or record ng literature, yun lang ang i-discuss niya. Teacher is the fountain of all knowledge. But then again, ulitin natin, in the 21st century, we shy away from this thought. Teachers are no longer the sole source of knowledge. We are not the fountain of knowledge. No, we are what? We are facilitators of knowledge. Students are passive listeners sa perennialism. Future orientation na to, hinahanda nila yung mga students nila to be what? Expect future to continue in the same vein as the present. So they want their students to become like them in the future, no? Maintaining culture, maintaining history. Belief that knowing the classics of the past will equip the students for the future. Tama nga naman, no? Ang mga kaganapan sa kasaysayan ay maaaring maging refleksyon kasi ng mga pwede nating gawing desisyon sa hinaharap, no? Okay. Ang focus niya ay does help to dampen the uncertain effects of the fads and come to education. Not every new idea is good. Take note of that. Or one that will even be effective. And perennialism plays well to traditional communities. So, mahalaga din po na kilalanin natin yung importance ng perennialism. Although majorly, no, the world is moving forward, we still have to keep the existing cultures in our education system. Next is behaviorism. Behaviorism believes in the science of behavior that would shape the world into a better place to live. Behaviorists, to some degree, rightfully claim that behaviorism naturally occurs in the world, whether people acknowledge it or not. Behaviorists believe in science of behavior and they rely heavily on scientific studies of behavior and how behavior is influenced by its consequences. Now, the human behavior is a very unpredictable. Kaya nga, di ba, our behavior is like a fingerprint. It's different from the other. Now, pagpasok naman natin sa education, madami tayong behaviorists na philosophers, no, or psychologists, no, that that helped us understand further on how we reflect or how should we see this in the educational system. So what would behaviorists teach? Ano mga ituturo niya? At least as concerned about how people behave as what they know. They do not tend to be big innovators in the curriculum. They will, however, give a fair trial to a new curricula that someone else might write. So ang approach nito ay based on, of course, behaviors. Focus is special education situation. We are already moving forward on inclusive education. So ang mga schools ngayon are required to uh, promote inclusive education, whether whatever subject you teach, where students do not pick up on subtle cues about learning or behavior. So alternative and problem schools. So if there are schools that are having problems with their students, no, when it comes to behavior or attitudes, yun yung gustong i-address ng behaviorism. Next is reconstructionism. Reconstructionism, again, points out on recreating education, reforming education, or reshaping education. Reconstructionists wants to point out that, again, no, the curriculum that we have can be recreated. Okay? Ano yung mga gusto nilang ituro? Ano yung mga ituturo ng mga reconstructionist teachers? Reconstructionists would teach the subjects that were taught during the Golden Age. Almost similar with perennialism, but the problem is, but the difference is, reconstructionism, they promote uh, change. No, they promote change. So based on the experiences during the Golden Age, what can be the change? The subject would be those that were taught during that time. The 1960s, they would teach the usage of the slide rule. Meaning, binabalikan nila yung mga old approaches during the Golden Age and then try to recreate it and reconstruct it. Or of course, futuristic pa rin yung approach niya. Kaya nga meron pa rin reconstructionist and science and technology. Their orientation is much to the past. They and perennialists do not react immediately and positively to new technology. However, si perennialists, no, parang closed na yung door niya when it comes to technology. But reconstructionism, social reconstructionism, no, is open for these changes and innovations, but they have to be critical, no, on accepting what is new. So next is existentialism. So existentialists celebrate human existence. Very subjective ito. May doubt external reality and emphasis on present. Please take note of these key terms. This might be very essential for your This might be very essential for your boards. Okay, take note of the terms. Now, what existentialists believe? So, existentialists believe in the consciousness of self, the way how you think, thinking the way how you think. They are very concerned with whether students find school to be satisfying, to be or to have a satisfying experience. Now, what would existentialists teach? Not the same subject to everyone, since not everyone would enjoy the same thing. They would emphasize self-esteem and feeling of self-worth. Okay, no. Ano napansin natin dito? Dito papasok yung idea of mental health, di ba? So the concept of mental health is actually very independent from one another sa bawat isa sa atin. Iba-iba tayo ng konsepto ng paano natin maiingatan yung ating kaisipan, no? So as an existentialist teacher will not teach you in a general approach or a general manner, but will teach you in a tailored fit approach. Kaya kapag ang teacher ninyo ay existentialists, ang maganda niyan kakausapin nila kayo, no? But the problem also is pwedeng ma-sacrifice yung content. Okay? Now, I would like to highlight no that there are so many philosophies of education. Okay? Some of them natalakay natin sa curriculum. And natalakay natin ngayon, no? And each of these philosophies has something to offer. There's always good in it. There's always good in it. But the only hazard happens when one philosophy rules for long period of time. Ito yung tatandaan natin. Wag nating hayaan na isang philosophy lang yung mag-prevail sa educational system for the longest time. Now, as I have mentioned kanina, no, ang mga subjects po natin are predominantly may predominant philosophy sila. Kagaya na sinabi ko kanina, mathematics is falls on idealism. But then again, I'm not saying that it is only idealism. I'm saying is by nature and by principle, idealism ang philosophy behind mathematics. Pero may mga ibang philosophies pa rin na present and evident on how you teach mathematics. Okay? So, ayun, as teachers, you have to develop your own, we develop our own or we craft our own teaching philosophies. Mostly, ito ay nakadepende sa subject na tinuturo natin. Okay? And how we view these subjects or how we teach these subjects, vice versa, yun din yung paraan natin kung paano natin ituro yung mga subjects na ito. Okay? Do we have any questions so far on the first part? Can you type 1 at the chat section if you want to move forward po? Continue po tayo. Okay, let's continue. Okay, social-cultural structural relationship of education. No? So, education and community. Um, are you familiar with the PPST? Familiar po ba kayo sa PPST? Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. Familiar po ba? You need to have a copy of PPST. Okay, that's good. May mga no. You can search it on the internet, no. A lot of questions might come from the PPST also for the LET. Dati yung NCBTS, tapos naging DNCBTS, tapos naging PPST. Ayan. Please have time to read on the PPST. Okay. Now, highlight ko lang po, no, yung factor ng diversity of learners. So, there is a differences in learners' gender, strengths, needs, interests, and experiences. So, as a teacher, no, we have to make our students feel that despite their differences on these factors, hindi dapat nila maramdaman that they are discriminated. Learners' linguistic, cultural, socioeconomic, and religious background Teachers, you should be sensitive ha, maging sensitive po tayo. Culturally sensitive po tayo sa mga ways kung paano natin i-approach or kausapin yung mga students natin because we really do not know what are their backgrounds. Learners with disabilities, gifted and talents. Um, Also, kailangan ma-address natin ito, no? We have to make them feel that they are not treated differently compared to the people that do not have disabilities, no? And also, nakalagay dito gifted and talents, those students naman that are above average or excellent or uh, in other term genius, no, dapat ma-address din natin yung ibang needs nila. Kasi kahit sabihin natin that academically they are excellent, somehow there are parts of their life that they have uh, to to process eh. Kasi yun yung mahirap kapag nag-i-skip yung bata. Example, there are a lot of stories wherein the student accelerated because he or she is smart. But because of that, no, na-engage siya sa more mature environment or more mature people, definitely leading him or her to a different behavior. So, careful din po tayo. Ingatan din natin yung mga genius natin, no? Learners under challenging circumstances include what? Geographic isolation, disaster, child abuse, child labor. Now, geographic isolation, mahalaga na yung kaya nga may mga teachers tayo na pinapadala 'di ba sa iba't ibang areas, may mga nagtuturo sa bundok, ayan. These are very challenging circumstance. Disaster area, lalo na din sa mga area na may gera, yan. Child abuse and child labor is also sana hindi natin i-promote yung ganitong setup, no, yung child labor. Let's not as teachers, no, we understand na may mga working students tayo, especially sa elementary and high school, wag nating encourage. Pag college, pwede na eh, kaya na nila mag-working student eh. Pero kapag lower years, no, high school or elementary, let's try to provide adequate education for them. Factors on culture and indigenous people. So, curriculum design, competencies, and content. So, mahalaga na yung tinuturo natin na content, no, tinuturo natin na subject ay inclusive, no? Minsan may maririnig tayo na maririnig natin from the IPs, no, na hindi namin kailangan ng karunungang pampatag. Okay? Kasi nga naman, kinreate yung curriculum nang hindi sila na-consult. So dapat, no, in crafting a curriculum, their culture has to be considered as well, di ba? Teaching methodologies and strategies, no. Ang approach natin bilang mga guro dapat varied ang approach natin kasi hindi maaari or hindi pwede na yung approach mo ay isang approach lang, no? Tapos uniform na yun sa lahat ng subjects na ituturo mo, sacrificing sabi natin 'di ba sa selecting of learning experience kanina, kailangan variety ito. Kailangan ma-address niya yung iba't ibang needs ng mga bata. Okay? Learning space and environment, it should be properly provided. When we talk about learning space, papasok dito yung learning environment, hindi lang classroom, hindi lang libro, hindi lang no, kundi adequate learning environment wherein it is properly lighted, properly ventilated. More importantly, it is safe. I want to stress out a safe uh, environment, educational environment. Kasi we really don't know where our students are coming from eh. Hindi natin alam kung saan sila nanggaling, di ba? So at least no, the least we could do is to provide them an atmosphere of growth and safety inside the school. Kaya nga 'di ba ang mga schools ay no arm zone, bawal po ang armed people sa loob ng paaralan. Learning resources. Of course, no, the learning resources must be provided properly. Now, careful tayo dito sa learning resources kasi there were times, no, nagkakaroon ng misinformation or alternative information sa mga learning resources natin na nakakaapekto sa culture and social structure ng family natin, social structure ng students natin, no. Halimbawa, there are naku maraming issue to sa DepEd, no. Example, the learning materials that is na tinatalakay yung magsasaka, tas yung picture na nandun is yung family na punit-punit yung damit, ganon. Eh hindi naman ganon lahat, na hindi naman ganon ang definition or itsura ng magsasaka. In fact, no, there are a lot of farmers then that owns the land na mas well off pa nga kaysa sa atin, 'di ba? So yun, that's a social insensitivity of the author, okay, or the publisher. Another one is, this was a case in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, wherein there's a textbook in Cordillera. A certain chapter was pulled out because the definitions for Igorot and Aita are parang napagpalit or na misrepresent ang Igorot and mga Aita. So hindi naman so the division, if I'm not mistaken, the division of Cordillera decided to pull out that textbook, no? So careful tayo sa learning resources natin na dapat ito ay culturally sensitive and socio-economically sensitive as well. And of course, classroom assessment. No? Take note that our assessments or the learning experiences can be experienced by everyone, considering the feasibility. Now, in inclusive education, future on focus on culture and indigenous people, madadaanan. I think madadaanan din natin to sa FS1 later. First is gender, no? Let us, ngayon, meron po tayong offices sa mga uh, government agencies na tinatawag na GAD office, which is Gender and Development Office, that wants to promote gender equality. Okay? There's a big aspect, no, a big chunk of misinformation about gender. So dapat tayo diyan, sensitive tayo bilang mga guro. Then no, example, as a teacher, wala kang karapatang mag-force na mag-out yung student mo nang hindi naman siya nag-out. Halimbawa, you have a male student na medyo mahinhin kumilos, ang tawag mo ganda. Hindi po pwede yon kasi you are already stepping forward from your role as a teacher, no, na ginalampasan mo na yung boundary ng student mo. So please, wag po tayong ganon. Careful tayo sa ganon. Next is needs. We do not know the needs of our students. So kailangan aware tayo, hindi lang sa cognitive domain tayo mag-focus, sa cultural din and socio-economic ang approach natin. Next is interests. Okay? Kaya mahalaga po ang determining interest sa placement ng bata kasi kahit na mataas ang admissions natin sa school, bumababa ang completion rate. Okay? Kung bumababa ang completion rate natin because students do not like their courses. So dapat alam natin kung ano interests nila. Next is experiences. We have different experiences. No? Classroom is a melting pot. Pagpasok sa loob ng paaralan, ang mga bata ay nanggaling yan sa iba't ibang tahanan na may iba't ibang kulturang pinanggalingan. Now, these experiences would definitely affect how they think and how they process knowledge. So careful tayo sa mga label natin, no? Next is language. As teachers, please, no, let's try to not use words that are inappropriate or that are judging, no, on our students. Races, careful din tayo. In again, no, we are not only citizen of the Philippines, we are citizen of the world. So careful tayo sa ganyan. Wag baka unconsciously maging prejudice ka or maging discriminatory ka. O kaya naman even in the Philippines, no, may taga-province tapos may accent, tapos ginagaya niya yung accent. Sa mga classmates niya, kung okay lang yon, siguro tolerable naman kung papayag yung student. But as teacher, please do not make fun of your make fun of your students, no? Even if it sounds like a joke. You can joke around naman, pero wag niyong gamitin yung student niyo as a piece of a laughing stock. Okay, iwasan po natin yon. Strength, you need to know the strengths of your students. Culture, again, be aware of the cultural backgrounds of the students. Next is religion. Be sensitive again with this one, kambal yan, with culture and religion. Socioeconomic background, wag niyo pong pag-usapan kung ano, this is one of the discussions on ethics, on research, no? Wag niyo pong pag-usapan ang mga inulam nila sa bahay kasi nagiging prejudice agad. Halimbawa, sa isang section, tinanong nyo anong breakfast nilang lahat. So, their breakfast can actually tell you a lot about their social economic background. So, dapat hindi po natin ginagawa yan. Why? Because classroom is an atmosphere of equality. Classroom is a space of equality. So, dapat pagpasok ng bata sa loob ng classroom, hindi niya matandaan or maramdaman na mahirap siya or mayaman siya. Instead, maramdaman nilang lahat sila ay mayroong equal opportunity. Okay? Malinaw po ba yun, guys? Is that clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes po,
Yes,
sir.
po.
Of course, next naman is to determine the weakness, no? Determine the weakness of your students. Be careful din sa mga IP natin, no? We have to cherish them. Why? Kasi to be honest, no, by purity sila ang pinaka pure-blooded Filipino compared to us, no, na may halo na. So what I'm trying to say is let us give respect to the indigenous people, and in fact, dapat sa pag-craft ng education system natin kasama sila. Kasi sila yung mayroong existing culture na pwede nating i-incorporate. Special needs, okay, students with special needs, challenges, and of course, determine the opportunities that we can give for our students. Okay? So, sorry. Sige lang po ha. For a while lang. So, can you see the slide po? Hello?
Yes po.
So, again, no, we also have to accept the fact that the world is moving forward. Merong tayong globalization na tinatawag, and it has an impact, no, impact of globalization, and it has an effect on the shift in education. First one is the economic impact, second is political impact, and third is social-cultural impact. Economic impact talks about, kanina nabanggit natin, no, that there is a correlation of the economic state of a certain country and its relation to the educational system of the country. Pag maganda yung ekonomiya nila, malaki ang chance na maganda din ang educational system nila and vice versa. Political impact, the different issues on the world has an effect to us. Hindi lang pagdating sa political, no, pero pagdating din sa educational system. Say for example, the wars that are going on, that have gone through last year and to date din, no, on Ukraine and Russia. This will definitely have an effect on the educational system as well, especially to the countries that are largely affected with it also. Next is socio-cultural impact. Laging may epekto po ang society and culture sa state ng education system natin. The paradigm shifts in education, learner-centered and learning-oriented curriculum, contextualized learning. It is very important, no, dear teachers, to find context of the content, holistic and integrated approach to education. And of course, lifelong education for all. So, yan. We have what we call Filipino local teacher. Anong ibig sabihin ng local? Having a global perspective while having a local, while maintaining local identity. Nakasabay po ba? Having a global perspective while maintaining a local identity. So tayo mga Pilipino, no, it is important that we move forward to go to globalization. Pero wag nating kakalimutan kung ano nga bang identity natin. So there are three major responsibilities of a teacher from the ASEAN country survey. Una is actual teaching. Mahalaga na magturo ka talaga. Next is management of learning. And then the next one is administrative works. They're administrative works. Kasi dapat aware ka dito sa tatlong skills na to kasi wherever you are, kung saan ka man ilagay sa ASEAN region, dapat familiar ka. Okay? Hindi lang compartmentalized sa local sa way of teaching ng country mo but also way of teaching ng other countries as well. Towards quality local teacher, 21st century education skills that should be attributed by quality teachers is una, global awareness. Bilang mga guro, dapat familiar tayo sa mga nangyayari sa mga kaganapan sa lipunan, hindi lamang sa Pilipinas o sa ating bansa, bagkus pati rin sa buong mundo. Hindi naman sinasabi na dapat alam mo lahat. Dapat aware ka lang sa mga issues na nangyayari. Next is financial, economic, and entrepreneurial literacy. Let's talk about una financial. No? When we talk about financial, laging I think it is important that as teachers we also recognize the importance of our salary, right? The importance of salary na patuloy pa rin namang inaasikaso or pinaglalaban natin, no? But in a global perspective, no, hindi lang po Pilipinas ang nakakaranas ng ng financial shortage ng mga teachers. Okay? But yes, you have to you have to find ways then no on what do you call this? Looking for other opportunities din. Kaya nga as bilang mga guro, marami tayong gampanin. Kaya marapat lang din na bigyan tayo ng pagkakataong magkaroon ng sapat na sahod, no? That equates with our what do you call this? Outputs or outcomes. Next is entrepreneurial literacy, no? I as a matter of fact is venturing different businesses also. Now, as a local teacher, dapat familiar ka sa states ng business. Why? Because business or sales also affects the educational system because they contribute a lot in the economy. So whatever happens in the economy, it would largely affect the education system. And the next is civic and health literacy. Civic talks about your citizenship, your role as a Filipino, your role as a global citizen. Tandaan natin ulit, no? Hindi lang tayo citizen or mamamayan ng Pilipinas, tayo ay mamamayan ng buong mundo. And of course, health literacy, saan nga ba nanggaling ang COVID-19? Baka mamaya isa ka sa mga teachers na nagsishare ng fake news na basta yan may mga fake news about it. Be careful with what you share as a teacher, no? A local teacher, a 21st century teacher or local educator is aware of what is true and what is good that's happening all over the world. Okay, what does it require? It requires what? Learning and innovative skills. Alam niyo sa mga guro, mahalaga na alam niyo yung mag-unlearn, mag-learn, unlearn, and relearn kung kinakailangan. No? Mas gugustuhin ko pa yung isang guro na willing matuto kaysa sa isang guro na alam niyang matalino lang siya. No? Lifelong and career, information, media, and technology skills. Mahalaga po ang ICT skills, especially during this pandemic. Kung ikaw ay isang guro tapos hindi ka marunong gumamit ng laptop during this pandemic, nako po, mahihirapan ka. Kaya bilang isang guro, dapat progressive and transformative ang mindset natin. And then lastly is life and careers skills. Okay? Questions po so far? May tanong po.
None po, sir.
Wala po, sir. Malinaw po.
Wala po.
Towards quality local teacher, quality teachers are competent teachers who can demonstrate exemplary on what? Mastery of knowledge, skills and values, and disposition relative to the following characteristics. Ito daw po yung mga characteristics ng isang local teacher. Una, understand one's own cultural identity and rootedness. Ikaw ba, gaano ka ka-Pilipino? Mga ganitong tanong, gaano ka ka-Pilipino? How well do you know your culture? How well do you know your history? No, dapat bilang isang local teacher, before you move global, you need to know your local. So, understand one's own cultural identity and rootedness. Saan ka nga ba talaga nagmula? Second one is knows and integrates global dimensions in subject area. You know global issues, you find global cases or global forms of knowledge that is relevant to your fields of knowledge. Halimbawa sa amin sa Chem, in 2019, the periodic table was completed, the SPDF block. Now there are scientists that want to find other elements or create new elements. So, dapat updated kami sa mga nangyayari sa content namin. Kasi kung kami hindi nag-update, malamang ang tawag pa rin namin sa mga elements that is above 100 is nakaunon pa kami, unon hexium, unon mga ganun pa, no? Pero hindi na because we are updated when it comes to the content. So you have to check, retroscope your content in a global perspective kasi baka mamaya sobrang huli na ng tinuturo mo sa tinuturo ng mundo. Okay? Engage learning in learning processes and uses what? Real life, local, and global examples. Sir, sabi mo kanina, huwag kaming gagamit ng example ng snow. Tama ba? Naalala nyo kanina, no? You have to contextualize your examples para nga magkaroon ng meaningful learning sa experiential level. Pero mahalaga po na sabihin natin kung ano yung actual na nararanasan nila sa local. And of course, allow them to be aware of what is happening global. Para kapag pumunta sila doon sa ibang lugar, no, magiging aware sila. But of course, mahalaga pa rin na stress with local examples rather than the global examples. Mahalaga lang, ini-inform lang natin sila sa mga global examples. So, these are the characteristics of a local classroom: flexibility of furniture and space, collaborative learning, facilitation of movement, foster creativity, utilizes technology. So, local learners, organized and orderly, focused and attentive, interactive and collaborative, learning and technology users. So, if you see these elements in your classroom, then you are in a local classroom. If you see this, if you are like this, organized and orderly ka ba? Focused and attentive ka ba? Interactive and collaborative ka ba? Nag-aaral ka ba? And are you a technology user? Therefore, you are a local learner. Okay? So before we proceed to the teacher and the community, mabilis na lang naman ito. Can we have a 5-minute break po? Let's have a 5-minute break. It's already 2 o'clock. Okay, before we proceed. Thank you. Hello, resume po tayo ng 2:05. Is that clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay po.
Sir.
Hello, good afternoon again. It's already 2:05. Are you guys ready to listen na po? Hello?
Yes po. Yes
Yes
po.
po, sir.
Tuloy natin, no? So the teacher in the community. Actually, I will just be discussing here the Code of Ethics no, for professional teachers, Article 2 and Article 3. I'm not sure, pero na-discuss niyo na ba to sa inyong uh, the teaching profession? Meron na bang nag-discuss nun? Uh, but I hope you are aware, no? You are aware of the familiar po kayo sa sa Code of Ethics, no? Okay.
Yes po, sir.
I'll just be discussing it. A quick discussion lang. Okay. No. Okay. So the Code of Ethics for professional teachers, these are standards, no, that how teachers should act on different in relation no, to different different we call this in relation to different roles of a teacher, no. So first is the teacher in the well, pinili ko lang yung dalawang article lang na ito. So pag-uusapan lang natin ito ng mabilis, no. Article 2. So the Article 2 talks about the teacher and the state, no. So the state of the Philippines, the Republic of the Philippines, and as a teacher. Section 1, the schools are nurseries for future citizens of the state. Each teacher is a trustee of a cultural and educational heritage of the nation and is under obligation to transmit to learners such as heritage, as well as to elevate national morality, promote national pride, cultivate love of country, instill allegiance to the Constitution, and for all duly constituted authorities and promote obedience to the laws of the state. So, take note of this role, no? Mabigat na gampanin ito. Sobrang bigat ng role na to as a teacher. But if you know, if you love your country, no, this will just follow. Magagawan mo ng paraan to incorporate nationalism rather, and patriotism in your learning content, no. Pero again, kailangan appropriate pa rin ito sa learning content ninyo. Halimbawa, if you're teaching mathematics and science, you can't force it eh. Okay? But yeah, may mga teachers naman na nagtuturo about nationalism, patriotism. But then again, if it can be seen in you, no, as a teacher, then it's good. Okay. Section 2, every teacher or school official shall actively help carry out the declared policies of the state and shall take an oath to this effect. So, we are, no, what we call this, people of authority. Teachers are people of authority. Eh. So we have a role, no? We have a role on carrying out this existing or prevailing laws of the land. Section 3, in the interest of the state and of the Filipino people, as much as of his own, every teacher shall be physically, mentally, and morally fit. So, kailangan matatag tayo bilang mga guro, no? May handa natin ang ating sarili, physically and mentally. Kasi kung face-to-face ito, sobrang draining talaga ng pagtuturo. And to be honest, no, nung nag-transition to online classes, I tried to consume the entire 3 hours of lecture of my online class before. I got sick. So sobrang totally sobrang tawag doon, mentally and physically draining yung teaching during online classes. For sure students are also drained, no, but kami talagang na-drain din kami. I got physically sick. So as a teacher, dapat we should know take good care of our health. Section 4, every teacher shall possess the actual and actualize a full commitment to devotion of the duty. So first, meron tayong oath, no, nung tayo nangako sa when we get our licenses, meron tayong oath, no. So we have to uh live to that oath. And if you are in a government office, meron kang oath din ng lingkod bayan. So kailangan mo ding panindigan yung panunumpa ng lingkod bayan mo. Okay. Section 5, this is very controversial. Section 5 and Section 7 was used to weaponize teachers to silence them. during this coming election. So, Section 5, a teacher shall not engage in the promotion of any political, religious, or other partisan interests and shall not directly or indirectly solicit, require, collect, or receive any money or service or other valuable material from any persons or entity for such purposes. So, yes, totoo naman yon. Yung nasa baba, hindi po ito kasama sa Section 5. This is an excerpt from me, no, on the on Section 5, no, that is weaponizing teachers to be silenced. Okay. Yes po, no. If you are in a government office or if you are in a government office, of course, we have to be non-partisan. Wala dapat tayo political activity, no? So DepEd employees are prohibited from participating from any partisan political activity. But according also to the rules of COMELEC, as also mentioned by Secretary Briones, teachers are allowed to express their stand on political problems or issues and mention the candidate and parties they are supporting, but not electioneering. So electioneering is taking part actively in election campaigns which are already mount to solicitation or promotion, or if it is intimately connected to the one's right to vote. Ngayon, again, no, vote tayo mga teachers, no, even if you are working in a public office, public government, pwede nating sabihin kung sino dapat nating iboto. Wala, hindi po nila pwedeng gamitin yung Article 2 Section 5 to silence the teachers on ano, kasi pagdating sa Section 6, no, all constitutional rights and every teacher shall vote and shall exercise all constitutional rights and responsibilities. Kasama na din doon, syempre, yung pagkilala kung sino nga ba yung iyong magiging kandidato. Okay? So, careful lang po tayo. Baka mamaya, takot kang mag-post kasi dahil dito, hindi po yun, as teachers, we are not supposed to be, we can be neutral, but that doesn't mean that we are apolitical because everything is very political really, no? Anyway, so every teacher shall vote and shall exercise all other constitutional rights and responsibilities. Section 7, a teacher shall not use his position or facial authority or influence to coerce any other person to follow any political course of action. So, in short, kung gagamitin mo yung power mo, no, to sasabihin mo plus points kayo kapag binoto nyo si ano or ganyan, yun po yung mali yun, no? You are using your power as a teacher to coerce your students to vote for someone. That's wrong. Okay, we cannot force our students on that, pero may role din tayo as a teachers to to educate our students, no, magmulat at magpamulat ka nga. Okay, now ito yung ginagamit. Okay. Now, Section 8, no? Every teacher shall enjoy academic freedom and shall have the privilege of expounding the product of his research and investigations, provided that if the results are inimical to the declared product policies of the state, they shall be brought to the proper authorities for appropriate remedial actions. So, ayun lang po. This is the Article 2, the teacher and the state. Meron tayong moral na gampanin bilang mga guro sa ating estado. Huwag po natin itong kalilimutan. We are, of course, no, babalik tayo sa Section 1. Ano bang sabi sa Section 1? Nihahanda natin yung mga students natin, no, as the future citizens of our country. So, bahagi ba ng paghahanda ng ating mga susunod na henerasyon ang pagiging tahimik? I think not, no. So again, as teachers, we have the right and we have the obligation to participate largely on issues on the state. So bukas, no, mga magigiting nating mga guro sa public schools ay magbabantay po ng eleksyon, kasama na din yung mga iba nating officials na mga police, kasundaluhan, no, mga BFP sa pag-serve, no, sa election. Panalangin natin na nawa ay mapayapa ang ating eleksyon. Anyway, next is the teacher and the community. This is Article 3. In the Section 1, a teacher is a facilitator of learning and the development of the youth. He shall therefore render the best service by providing an environment conducive to such learning and growth. Take note, dear teachers, no? Anong sabi dito? Hindi good, hindi better, ano? Best service by providing an environment conducive to such learning and growth. So, again, pagpasok sa loob ng paaralan, dapat hindi maramdaman ng bata na siya ay discriminated. Section 2, every teacher shall provide leadership and initiative to actively participate in community movements for moral, social, educational, economic, and civic betterment. Kung pupunta kayo sa provinces, sino ba yung laging nilalapitan ng community? Ang mga guro, mga maestra at maestro. Dito din sa Pilipinas, dito din sa sa cities, no, sino bang hinihingian minsan ng payo? Ang mga teachers. Okay. Now, on section 3, take note of this. Every teacher shall merit reasonable social recognition, for which purpose he shall behave with honor and dignity at all times and refrain for such activities as what? Gambling, smoking, drunkenness, and other excesses, much less illicit relations. So, ayun po. Sana malinaw ho ito, no, bilang mga guro. We have to take good care of our image. Why? Because we are we are models of society. We are really expected to be models of society. So we really have to behave properly. Kapag ang ibang profession nakita yung naninigarilyo, gambling, a little bit medyo tolerable. Pero pag nakita natin yung isang teacher, anong sasabihin ng isang bata, no? Na pinagbabawal mo siyang gawin yung mga bagay na yan nang ikaw naman ay ginagawa mo ito. So as teachers, no, please be careful. Okay, again, I'm not preventing you from doing this. I'm just stressing out on what is indicated in the Code of Ethics for Professional Teachers. For Section 4, every teacher shall live for and with the community and shall therefore study and understand local customs and traditions in order to have sympathetic attitude, therefore refrain from disparaging the community. So, as a teacher, dapat actively involved tayo sa mga activities ng community, whether it be barangay activity, a church activity, a school activity, in wherever area you are planted. Section 5, every teacher shall help the school keep the people in the community informed about the school works and accomplishments as well as its needs and problems. Section 6, every teacher is intellectual leader in the community, especially in the barangays, and shall welcome opportunity to provide such leadership when needed, to extend counseling services as appropriate, to actively be involved in matters affecting the welfare of the people. So, pansin ninyo, 'di ba, sa election sino bang tinatawag na magtrabaho? Mga teachers. Kapag may mga events pertaining to social issues, tatawagin sina teacher. Ayan. Kaya madami po talaga tayong trabaho, no? But anything that is for the welfare of the Filipino people, dapat lagi tayong in service. At kung papansinin ninyo, no, other jobs, pagta-time in ka lang, magta-time out ka, tapos na yung tawag sa'yo, no? But if you're a teacher, no, mag-time in ka man, mag-time out ka man, bakasyon man o hindi, ang tawag pa rin sa'yo ng mga estudyante mo ay ma'am at sir. Section 7, every teacher shall maintain harmonious and pleasant personal and official relations with other professionals, with government officials, and with other people individually or collectively. So, teachers, no, again, we have a role, no, we have a role to maintain harmonious relationship. Huwag po tayong mag-create ng feud between the community. Okay? Mas pangit tingnan kapag sa teacher nang galing ang gulo. Kasi we are expected to be people that are mediating in different issues of the society. And of course, lastly, Section 8, a teacher possesses freedom to attend church and worship as appropriate but shall not use his position and influence to proselyte others. So I cannot force my students to go to church with me, but I can invite them if I want to, but I cannot force them. Okay? So, You see, these are our roles as teachers, no, as mandated by our constitution. And also take note of this one because the article 2 and 3 is the most ito yung mas laging lumalabas sa let questions when it comes to code of ethics, pati na din yung the teacher and the profession, no, the teacher and the person, yung person part, no, lumalabas din yun minsan. Okay, so take note of your role as a teacher in the state and in the community. And kasama na din doon your organizational leadership that as teachers, no, again, we are people of authority or person of authority in our community. Hence, we have a moral responsibility to take good care of our community kung nasan man tayo. Kaya wag po sana tayo mag-umpisa ng gulo kung saan man tayo na talaga. Okay? Question so far before we proceed to the last one? May tanong po ba? Malinaw po ba iyon? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kindly type 0 at the chat section if you are ready na tuloy natin ang laban. Okay, so again, no, bukas pa lang, umpisahan nyo na yung role ninyo, gampanin ninyo na bumoto ng mahusay at matalino. Okay. Ready? Tuloy po tayo. Field Study 1. Ito na yung last part ng ating pag-uusapan ngayon. Field Study 1. Actually, una ito, pero nakiusap ako kay Dean kung pwedeng ihuli ko siya kasi nasa Field Study 1 na lahat eh. Kasi Field Study 1 is like the portfolio of the compilation of all your professional education subjects. Medyo madami din siya. Okay, also i-promote ko na lang din, I also have, like my discussion on STS and NVISI, I have existing pre-recorded lectures on field study and on curriculum development in my FB page, YouTube, no, called JD's Corner. If you want, I'll also be sending the link on Field Study 1. But anyway, ayun. Tuloy po tayo. Anyway, let's proceed to the last part. Alam kong baka pagod na din tayo, no? Field Study 1. So sa Field Study 1, development of learners and the learners environment, part 1. And then part 2, the school and the curriculum and instructions. And then part 3 is reflective teacher. Now, kung titingnan ninyo yung curriculum ng Field Study 1, actually merong 16 episodes yan. If you've taken your FS1 already, merong 16 episodes yan. So 16 na episodes na yan, nahati yan sa 3 parts. So hinati ko yan sa iba't ibang parts. Wala ako naghati. Hinati yan ng program in different parts. Okay. So yung part 1, development of learners and learners environment, papasok dyan yung first 7 episodes. So what are the first 7 episodes? The School and the Environment, Episode 1. Episode 2, Learner Diversity and Emphasis on Development. 3 naman is on Learner Focus. So I think nadaanan na natin to kanina. Episode 4 is Community and Home Diversity. Number 5 is Creating Appropriate and Learning Environment. 6 is Classroom Management and Routine. Somehow nadaanan na natin. Physical and personal aspect of classroom management. So, this will be our discussion na, no? This will be our content discussion. 16 episodes yan, parang kay drama lang. So, kaya natin ito. Okay, so let's start with the episode 1, the school environment. So, the school and physical environment must be conducive for learning. Now, keep the school safe. Sorry, that's supposed to be safe. Safe, clean, orderly, and free from distractions. Maintain facilities that provide challenging activities and address physical, social, and psychological needs of our students. So, make sure na yung physical environment natin ay safe. Kaya unang-una yun, safe, clean, to make sure that it is conducive for learning. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng conducive for learning? It is appropriate for atmosphere of growth na matututo talaga yung bata. Okay? Now, these are some guidelines on schools' visual environment. First one is decorative, pero hindi extravagant decoration. Baka naman sobrang lala ng decoration mo. Somehow thematic to the theme of the school. Somehow pleasing to the eyes, no? Next is motivational. Dapat nakalagay diyan yung mga, di ba papansinin ninyo yung mga yung mga bulletin boards ng mga schools, no, sa DepEd or even in CHED, na makikita natin may mga motivational quotations o kaya naman mga motivational pieces like sabihin natin kahit yung mga statues or mga uh, what do you call this, pictures or portraits of the previous principals or previous directors, presidents of the school are somehow motivational din yon, no? Next is informational. Informational, dapat nandun ang mission, vision, and goals. Okay? So, dapat nandun ang vision, mission, and goals ng school. Dapat nakikita iyon. Tapos sa mga bulletin boards naman ng mga per subject, dapat nandun, may mga key concepts dapat na nandun. Papasok yun sa instructional. Sa instructional naman, papasok din doon yung organizational structure, makikita dapat doon. Makikita din doon yung sabihin natin the map of the school kung pwede. Okay, so that's informational and instructional. So those are the school's visual environment recommendations. Now, ang bulletin board naman or bulletin or display boards must be powerful in communicating information about learning environment, help in building and establishing school culture, show the mission, vision, goals, and philosophies that are that the school upholds. No, so the elements of the bulletin boards are the following. First is communicating. So dapat ito ay effectively communicating, no? Readable ito, pleasing to the eye, active, balance dapat. Nandun din yung elements of unity. Interactive ito. If you want, pwede kang maglagay ng free pen doon, tapos pwede magsulat yung bata. Legibility, meaning it could be read. Correctness, true information ha. What is true and what is good. And of course, durability. Baka naman pagkakabit mo, nalaglag na agad yung bulletin board mo. So, these are the elements of a bulletin board. Akala nyo, gagawa ka lang ng bulletin board ng wala-wala lang, no? But actually, all my references for the field study came from this book. So nagulat din ako nung when I was teaching this in 2020 or 2019, no? When I was preparing, ang paggawa ng bulletin board ay may may principles behind it. So similar through. This is this FS1 book is actually a book from authored by Dr. Corpus. So if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Corpus is still at the board ng council ng preparation for teachers, no, board for teachers. Okay. Anyway, so episode 2, mabilisan lang po ito. Learners diversity, developmental ang focus nito. Development of learners, sa growth ng ating students, ano yung tinuturo sa atin sa psychology of learners. Ang growth is cephalocaudal, up to bottom or head to toe ang growth. Proximodistal is from center to side. Okay? Cephalocaudal, nakikita po ba ako? Can you guys see me? Nakikita ba ako? Hindi.
Opo, sir.
Cephalocaudal is from head pababa, no? Kaya nga mas malaki yung ulo ng baby muna. And then proximodistal is from center to hand. That's, di ba, kung makita ninyo yung kamay ng bata habang baby then definitely when the baby is growing, nag-umpisa na siya mag-spread ng kanyang kamay. So that's the growth process, no? Cephalocaudal and proximodistal. So the development takes growth, no? So you cannot force it. So there are different domains of development and learning. We have the physical, As mentioned kanina, cephalocaudal and proximodistal, yung physical growth ng bata, nagva-vary pa yung rates yan, varying rates pa yan. The second one is social. Again, this is largely dependent on the differences when it comes to social strata kasi it affects din it affects largely the mental state of the child, no, kung ano yung nutrition na provide sa kanya while he or she was young. Emotional growth is also very important. Gaano kaya ng batang i-take yung stress ng academics, no? But I hope, no, my hope is that although studying is a little bit of stressful, but I hope it's a positive stress, not a negative stress that causes anxiety to the students. Good stress is good kasi nagiging excited yung yung muscle mo, yung heartbeat mo. That's a good stress every time if you get excited, no. Sana ganong stress yung nararamdaman ng bata sa education, hindi yung stress na panic. Of course, cognitive, no, cognition. Iba-iba po ang rates ng bata sa kanilang pag-iisip, no. You cannot force a student. So I hope no iwasan po natin yung pag-compare sa mga students natin na parehas lang kayo ng edad pero magkaiba kayo ng bawas-bawasan po natin iyon kasi hindi naman talaga yung nakakatulong sa bata, nakaka-demotivate pa po yon. In fact, for others it might work, but most probably it would definitely demotivate someone na kinokompara mo pa. Kasama din sa principles ng learner diversity, there are different theories behind it. Let's talk about psychosexual theory of development by Sigmund Freud. Somehow nadaanan na natin to last time. I'm not sure kung kayo din yung programs na tinuruan ko ng mnemonics na to ng OA palagi. Kayo ba yun?
Yes po, sir.
Okay din pala yun. Okay. Sa oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, Latin stage, and the genital stage. So in each stages, there is a concentration or focus of the pleasure or of the libido. Oral stage nasa mouth, dun dapat tinuturuan yung batang kumain properly, nag-experiment yung bata kung ano yung edible and not edible. Anal stage, dapat dito tinuturuan yung bata ng toilet training, kapag natatae, tumae, kapag naiihi, umihi. Phallic stage naman, this is the stage wherein students develop an attraction to the opposite sex. Usually this is more, pero hindi sexual, no, what they call this, attraction lang, a little bit of attraction, kaya mas nagiging close si baby girl kay daddy, mas nagiging close si baby boy kay mommy, no. We call that electra complex for electra complex for girls and Oedipus complex for boys. Latent stage naman is for wherein the libido is no longer found in the body, but it is found in activities that the student is doing, pwedeng school, pwedeng kaibigan niya. And of course, genital stage, the location of the libido is in the genital onwards. No? Puberty onwards na yon. Now, iwasan natin again, yung tinatawag nating fixation, no? Kasi kapag nagkaroon ng fixation, nagkakaroon tayo ng problem. So, halimbawa, oral stage, kapag kayo nagngangata pa ng kuko, kayo ay kain lang ng kain kapag nai-stress, probably you have a chance that you have an oral stage stagnation. Kaya naman yung mga batang nagde-develop ng UTI kasi pigil ng ihi, pwedeng nagkaroon ka ng fixation sa anal stage. Yung mga students na super close sa parents, no, kinasal na't lahat, o kaya naman mga tao na super close sa parents, kinasal na't lahat, ayaw pa rin lumayo sa mommy at daddy nila. Tapos yun, nakakabit palagi sa parents nila, pwede ka din nagkaroon ng stagnation sa phallic stage. And sa Latin stage naman, puro ka barkada o kaya naman puro ka trabaho. Yan, yung mga na-addict, nakita niya yung pleasure sa trabaho or sa paglalaro or sa barkada. Pwede din yung maging sign ng fixation sa latent stage. Okay? Well, familiar na naman kayo dito kasi natalakay ko na to last time. Proceed tayo sa psychosocial developmental theory ni Erik Erikson. Familiar with this one, guys? Familiar with familiar na kayo with this one, daanan lang natin ulit, no? These stages of the psychosocial developmental theory, again, no, kaya madami pa tong mga theories na to about development of a learner, no, because they want to shy away from what Sigmund Freud said, that everything is driven by pleasure. Well, in fact, hindi lang naman iyon yung basis, no, hindi lang naman iyon yung basehan ng development ng tao. So when Erik Erikson crafted the psychosocial development, he created 8 stages, no, wherein there are different conflicts that has to be settled. Ano yung mga conflicts na ito? The first one is from sa infancy stage, birth to 18 months, trust and mistrust. This is when you see the child, kung nagpapabuhat lang siya sa tao na trust niya, usually mom and dad lang niya yung trust niya. Sa kanila lang siya nagpapabuhat. Napansin niyo ba yon? Hello? Napapansin niyo ba yon?
Opo.
Yes, sir.
Each sa ano naman, sa early childhood, sa 1.5 to 3 years old, autonomy versus shame. This is the time wherein sobrang kulit na nila. Confident, dito sila nakakapag-develop ng confidence. Kasi ano to dito na sila nakaka-develop ng confidence. Kapag pumapayag ka, no, kapag shame naman, ito yung mga estudyante, ito yung mga ano na lagi mo sinasabihan ng no, no, no. So bawasan natin yung pagsasabi ng no sa mga bata, no. Hindi ko sinasabing wag, sabi ko lang po bawasan. Kasi kapag puro no, mapupunta na lang sa isip nila puro mali na lang ginagawa ko, definitely developing a shame on their end. If this would affect the next stage, which is late childhood stage in 3 to 5 years old, initiative versus guilt. This is the time wherein every actions na may gagawin si bata, anong gagawin niya? Lagi siyang titingin kay mommy at daddy kung agree ba o hindi. Okay? Titingin siya kapag initiative, gagawin niya na lang kasi na-develop niya from autonomy based on his or her confidence. Pero kapag guilt yan, lagi ang titingin kay mommy at daddy at hihintayin pa yung approval ng mommy at daddy niya bago niya gawin. Okay? So that's guilt. The next one is school age, 6 to 12 years old. And industry versus inferiority. Kaya nga 'di ba sa stage na to, ang pleasure ay nakikita sa activities ng bata, sa mga kaibigan, sa pag-aaral, sa passion, sa paglalaro ng music, or anything, industry 'yon. Inferiority is when they develop of course an inferiority complex wherein ayaw na lang nila kasi hindi naman sila sinusuportahan, hindi naman sila nag-excel sa field na 'yon. That's from 6 to 12. Adolescence is identity and role confusion. Mabigat tong stage na to. Nasaan ako? Tama. Identity versus role confusion, adolescence to, teen years. From 12 to 20, so in between of the teen years, dito ka magkakaroon ng identity versus role confusion. Hindi lang pagdating sa sa sexually, pero pagdating sa roles mo sa society, pagdating sa mga pwede, mga bawal, no. So dito ka nagke-create ng identity mo kung ano yung mga principles na tatanggapin mo sa life mo, mga principles na hindi mo tatanggapin. Now, 20 to 25, this is a stage of intimacy and isolation. Sa intimacy of isolation, dito ka na nag-uumpisa maghanap or naghahanap ka na ng partner na makakasama mo. No? Pwedeng intimacy sa family, intimacy sa friends, intimacy with a partner, a girlfriend or a boyfriend, versus isolation, wherein you decide to be alone. Okay? Next is, sorry, mali ako ng andito. This is 25 to 60. Generativity versus stagnation. Dito ka na nagkakaroon ng development ng pagkakaroon ng good life or being stagnant na doon ka na lang. Okay? And then lastly is the level of maturity, the 60 years old to death, no? So integrity versus despair. Integrity is when you are already starting to give off, nag-overlap po yan with generativity, to give off goodness to the people. No? Yan yung mga matatandang mayaman na nagpapatayo ng foundations. Yan. Or people that have despair, na madaming regrets sa life nila na hindi nila ginawa. So sana sana at the end of our life we see we're at the integrity, we're at the integrity and not in despair. Right? Question so far? May tanong?
Wala naman po.
Malinaw naman yun, guys. Is that clear?
Yes po.
Yes po.
Yes po.
Okay. Episode 3, somehow nadaanan na natin to kanina, the learner focus, physical development. So dito papasok dito yung yung sociocultural background ng bata. Pero before that, let's check physical development muna. So development and learning proceed at varying rates as well as uneven rates across the different stage of child's function. So iba-iba ang rates of development natin sa different facets of life natin. Not necessarily, hindi ibig sabihin na nagbabasa na yung isang bata, dapat at the same age nagbabasa na din yung anak mo. No? But there's a range. There's a range. So wag natin silang madaliin. Development and learning are maximized when learners are challenged at the level above their current mastery. So it's good to challenge them, but not to the extent of stressing them out too much. Okay, kapag hindi na kaya, huwag nyo na masyadong ipilit. Kawawa naman yung bata. Differentiated instruction is a student approach and the aim to match the learning content, activities, and assessment to the different characteristics, abilities, and interests and needs of the learners. Always remember, my dear future teachers, that learning content, activity, and assessment should be in line with what? The abilities, interests, and needs of your learners. We've already discussed this a while ago, the PPST factors that affect the factors that bring diversity of learners. You have to be inclusive. As teachers, again, your approach has to be inclusive. We also talked about this already. Focus natin ito. Saan pag sinabi lolo ko po yung internet. Anyway, lagi nating tatandaan that these are reminders to us to be very sensitive, culturally sensitive, and socially sensitive as well. Okay, punta tayo sa learners diversity on community and home. Are you familiar with Yuri Bronfenbrenner's ecological model of learning environment? Familiar po ba kayo dito? Are you familiar with this one? Can you type at the chat section? Very good. Okay, that's good. Yes. Okay. On the microsystem, this is the child. Ang nare-recognize lang niya is himself. And then on the mesosystem, dyan na po papasok yung family. Dyan na din papasok yung school. Dyan na din papasok yung healthcare. So there's an overlap in microsystem and mesosystem wherein the family is able to penetrate. The next is the exosystem. This is already outside sa nakikita ng bata or nakikita ng individual. Pag lumalaki yung sphere niya, yung malaki yung ecological model niya, nandyan na yung friends of family, nandyan na din yung mga kamag-anak, mga social welfare services, extended family members, media, social media, right? And neighbors and peers. And of course, the macro system. The macro system is a global world na, global view na to. social classes understanding, and understanding universal laws. So that's the macro system. Now, yung chrono system is the entire ecological model from the microsystem to the macro system. Ang element nito is outward because the child is already exploring the world behind his or her self, his family, his community, society, his country, and in a global perspective. The next one is Diana Bermin's parenting style. Are you familiar with this one? Familiar po ba kayo sa sa
Hindi po, sir.
okay. So sige, isa-isahin natin ito ng ano lang. So you can see a quadrant, 'di ba? You can see in this quadrant at the top along the y-axis, no, high, low, high yung nasa taas, low yung nasa baba. Along the x-axis, high yung nasa kanan, low yung nasa baba. Ngayon, puntahan natin yung apat na types of parenting styles. The first one is authoritarian. The authoritarian has high demandingness and low warmth. Low warmth and high demandingness. Anong nangyayari dito? You have little warmth, autocratic, structured environments, high expectations, punishment, clear rules, emotionally distant, and power over. As a parent, bali ang nangyayari sa'yo since you are authoritarian, mataas ang demand mo, low ang warmth mo, ang nangyayari, ang nagiging sagot mo sa anak mo palagi kapag nagtatanong siya ng bakit, ang sasagot mo ay, because I said so. Kasi sinabi ko, sumunod ka. Kasi sinabi ko. You are not explaining the demand, no? Halimbawa, mag-aral ka ng mabuti kasi sinabi ko. The demand is high, but the warmth is not there. It's a low approach, no? It's low. So, yeah, that's authoritarian. Next one naman is permissive. You have high responsiveness and low control or strictness. Masyado ka namang maluwag. Yung kanina masyadong mahigpit, yung authoritarian. Permissive is masyado namang maluwag, no? So, avoid confrontations. Ito yung laging sasabihin na tanungin mo si mami mo, tanungin mo si daddy mo, laging pinapasa sa partner ko yung yung decision making, few indulgent, few rules, accepting, lenient, bumagsak po ako daddy, mami. Sige, okay lang 'yun. Enroll ka na lang ulit. Yung mga ganong klaseng parents, non-directive and low expectations. So, definitely they just tell their child or children, no, you're the boss. Kung naman yung boss ng sarili mo, kaya mo yan. Buhay mo na yan, kaya mo na yan. So that's permissive. They are very very maluwag, no? The next one is rejecting, or also referred as uninvolved. Rejective or rejecting or uninvolved. This has a low control or strictness and low warmth. At least kanina sa permissive, high warmth, nangyari nagiging spoiled yung bata, no? Pero dito sa uninvolved or rejecting, ang baba na nga ng warmth mo, ang baba pa ng control mo and strictness mo. So nangyayari, no, nakikipag-compete yung bata sa attention mo. Sample, puro ka na lang trabaho tapos di mo pa siya pinapansin, no? Little time. Ito yung mga parents na hindi involved doon sa life stages or life milestones ng mga anak nila, yung awarding, graduation, yung hindi nila alam na hindi na pala nag-aaral yung anak nila, hindi nila alam na they really don't know what's happening in their life, in their children's life, no? They are uninterested, they are neglectful and passive. Most of the time, these are parents that just provides the food on the table. So, basta pinapakain kita, pinapatira ka, that's it, period. May mga ganung may mga ganung principles. So, you're on your own, yun yung approach niya. But take note that parenting is not only providing the physical needs of the child, no? Instead, providing all the needs of the child. And then lastly is authoritative. No? So authoritative, although mataas ang demand niya, mataas din ang responsiveness niya sa kanyang child. So Um, it is responsive. It is power with. It has high expectation, clear standards, democratic, assertive, and flexible. So meron pa ring meron pa ring element of authority as a parent, and at the same time meron pa ring element of democracy yung child mo, because you want to talk about it. So if your child is having a problem, you would talk about it. Okay? So pag-uusapan ninyo yung mga house rules, mga makikipag-bargain kayo sa mga kayang gawin or kayang i-attain ng anak ninyo. So, yes, siguro for this case, I would say that the best parenting style is authoritative, no? Based on Diana Berman's parenting style quadrant. So, ayun, dapat familiar po tayo dito kasi there's a time that this might come out, no? This might come out. Question so far po? Andyan pa ba?
Po, sir.
I know that it is siesta time, no, but I hope you guys are still with me. Okay. Number five is creating appropriate learning environment, atmosphere of learning. So we have specific classroom rules and procedure are clear. Kailan natin dapat binibigay ang classroom rules and procedures? As mentioned kanina sa ating discussion,
So, simula pa lang po.
umpisa pa lang, sa simula pa lang ng academic year, so umpisa pa lang ng klase, kailangan ma-stress mo na agad kung anong dapat yung rules and procedure mo at huwag kang magpabago-bago sa kalagitnaan. Classroom rules and procedures are discussed within the first few days of the school. Students are involved in the design of rules and procedures. Techniques to acknowledge and reinforce acceptable behavior are employed. Clear limits for the unacceptable behavior are established and negative consequences for such are communicated, and classroom process are democratic. So in crafting the rules, maglatag ka ng rules mo as a teacher, but also allow your students to bargain with the rule. Why? Why is it important to involve the students in crafting the rules? Because kapag kasama sila sa nag-craft ng rule, definitely mas malaki yung chance na sumunod sila sa rule na pinagkasunduan ninyo. Nakakasabay ho ba, teachers?
Opo, sir.
Thank you.
Yes po, sir.
So, classroom must be inclusive. As I have mentioned and repeatedly mentioned kanina, no, it has to foster all the types of learners na meron. A classroom is like a melting pot. A classroom is like a melting pot of cultures. Nanggaling yan sa iba't ibang households na may iba't ibang culture. Okay? So dapat inclusive ka when it comes to culture, when it comes to gender, when it comes to religion, no? When it comes to special needs of the students. Oh, hold on, there's a question. Pero ano pong pinagkaiba ng authoritarian sa authoritative? Is it okay if I go back a bit, no? Hello. So, authoritarian, as I have mentioned kanina, authoritarian is have high demand pero mababa yung warmth niya. Masyadong stricto, ika nga, ang taas ng expectation sa anak niya, pero masyadong stricto. Hindi man lang niya mabigyan ng ng reward yung anak niya, no? Authoritarian approach is focused on power over. Focus ito sa punishment kapag hindi na-attain ng anak niya yung expectations niya. So mataas yung demandingness level niya. While on the other hand, that's authoritative ha. That's authoritarian ha. Now yung authoritative naman, mataas ang demand niya, pero at the same time, democratic yung approach niya sa anak niya. Kasi sa authoritarian, sumunod ka kasi sinabi ko. Sa authoritative, sumunod ka, ipapaliwanag ko kung bakit kailangan mong sumunod. Okay? Sa authoritarian, mag-aral ka na mabuti kasi sinabi ko. Sa authoritative, mag-aral ka na mabuti kasi yan lang yung maibibigay ko na hindi makukuha ng iba sa iyo. Did I answer your question, Miss Erica? Okay, thank you. Anyway, let's go back here. So classroom must be inclusive, no? Dapat inclusive ang classroom. Hindi dapat mararamdaman ng bata na discriminated siya on the basis of gender, culture, religion, or needs. Next is foster respect. It should foster respect. A school should be a school or a classroom should promote respect when it comes to views and opinions. But then again, naging issue natin yung respect my opinion, no? But as teachers, you need to base your opinions on facts. Kasi critical tayo mga guro. Dapat ang basihan natin ng ating mga opinion ay base sa facts and what is true. Hindi tayo pwede mag-create ng hunch on the basis of hunch and on the basis of of feeling lang natin. Okay. Upholds academic excellence. So upholds academic excellence. Always tatandaan natin, no, ano bang gusto natin maiuwi ng mga estudyante. The meat of the curriculum, yung laman dapat ang maiuwi nila. Promotes moral integrity and of course, no, morality is still a big factor. And next is meaningful learning. Provide a meaningful learning by providing a meaningful experience, no, learning experience for them para maalala nila. Differentiated learning, and motivational. So dapat ang sa loob ng paaralan, again, a school or a classroom is a freeing environment. A free classroom because it's a proof that education is liberating. Okay. Next is classroom management and routines. Classroom management and routines. Establish routines. I've already discussed this before. Mahalaga na ma-establish mo yung classroom routine at the first sessions as well as the rules. Okay? I've also mentioned kanina din yung instructions, no? Events of Instructions by Robert Gagne. Hindi lang ito yung sinusunod natin, pero ito yung pinakakilala na sinusunod nating structure of learning of curriculum implementation or learning experience when it comes to classroom. Okay? 7 is physical and personal aspect of classroom management. Importance of effective classroom management. Una, increase the chance of student success. Kapag maganda ang paraan ng teacher, you know what? Kapag maganda ang paraan ng teacher ng kanyang pag-manage ng classroom, the level of success and level of acquisition of knowledge is tawag dun, is higher, no? So, actually, during this pandemic, classroom management is the most, together with assessment, no? Silang dalawa yung pinaka-apektado talaga kasi sa classroom, no, kontrolado natin yung atmosphere, kontrolado natin yung ingay, kontrolado natin yung ilaw, kontrolado natin yung voice natin kung dinig ba tayo, no. In short, controlled natin yung learning condition ng bata at some point. Pero pagdating sa online classes, hindi natin alam kung saan nga ba nag-aaral or saan nga ba nakikinig yung bata. So we do not really know if the student is learning or not. Okay? So, okay. Going back, no, a good or effective classroom management paves the way for teachers to engage students to learning. Helps create an organized classroom environment, increases instructional time. Ibig sabihin, dahil established na yung classroom routines and classroom rules mo, hindi mo nakakailanganing magpaulit-ulit ng instructions mo. Ang gagawin mo na lang ay nagpo-proceed ka na lang sa pagtuturo ng iyong content. Next is creates consistency in the employment of rules and regulations, alignment management strategies with the school-wide standards, decrease misbehavior in the classroom, and give students boundaries and consequences. There are two aspects of classroom management. Una is personal classroom management. Ito yung kay teacher. As a teacher, dapat ang voice mo ay modulated, dapat dinig ito from in a face-to-face classes, dapat dinidig hanggang likod. In an online class, dapat naririnig or audible, dapat walang background noise na naririnig. Okay? That's the voice. Next is personal grooming. Papansinin ninyo yung mga teachers ninyo, maraming teachers ang fashionista. Ako hindi ako fashionista eh. But I mean, they want to keep them. You as a teacher, you have to keep yourself well groomed, no? Because studies have shown also that people that are well groomed, mas nakikinig yung bata, no? Next is attendance. As a teacher, no, your and punctuality, sabay na din natin punctuality. As a teacher, you are a role model of your students, so dapat you should walk your talk if you are talking about attendance and punctuality. And of course, personal philosophy, no, yung prinsipyo mo, yung principle or filosofiya mo bilang isang guro. This is largely influenced by the subject that you are teaching and by yourself, no, kung ano ka talaga. Next is physical classroom management. Lighting, dapat well lit ito, hindi dapat dim lights, hindi dapat sobrang liwanag. Ventilation, dapat mayroong airway para sa hangin in and out. Kung hindi man, dapat air conditioned na appropriate yung temperature na below 1 or 2 degrees lang, kasi lower than that baka antukin na talaga yung bata. Next is seating arrangement. It plays a vital role, yung pagkakasunod-sunod ng mga upuan. Structure, design of the classroom also plays a vital role. Kaya dapat well-designed yung classroom mo, lalo na kung homeroom teacher ka. And of course, physical space and learning stations, tables of the students. Na dapat yung mga table nila ay maaayos. Okay? So this is the part 2, the school curriculum and instructions. Dadaanan na lang natin yung iba dyan kasi I'm sure familiar kayo. But before we continue for part 2 and part 3, let's have a quick rest kasi nangangati na po yung lalamunan ko.
Go lang po, sir. Go lang po.
Let's have a rest until 3:10. Last na naman yun. Patapos na din tayo. Thank you. Guys, resume tayo ng 3:10. Thank you. Okay. Hello po. Tuloy tayo. Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes po, sir.
Yes, sir. Continue lang po.
Okay. So we're now on a part 2, no, the school curriculum and the instructions, no. So the coverage are episode 8, the school and the curriculum, preparing 9 is preparing the teacher and learning, teaching and learning. 10 is instructional cycle, 11 is utilizing teaching, learning resources and ICT, 12 is assessment for and as learning, formative, and then 13 is assessment of learning, summative po yan, saya. Summative. Now, maybe you're wondering kung bakit episode yung gamit. Bakit nga ba episode yung gamit sa field study? Because when we talk about episode, these are the phases that a teacher will encounter during the field study 1. Okay? Kasi ang field study 1, yan na yung time, that's the time wherein the teacher is already preparing, no, before you go to off campus. Okay. So, although we already discussed this kanina, no, isang slide lang naman itong about sa curriculum, the school with the curriculum, no. What is curriculum? So, curriculum is broadly defined as the totality of students' experience that occurs in the educational process. So whatever happens in the educational process, from the objective learning content, learning experience, and evaluation is all indicated in the curriculum. No? I also mentioned kanina that the curriculum is reflected in a large scale, no, before it is reflected in an instructional level. The term often refers specifically as a planned sequence of goal, instruction, and assessment to view the student's experience. Again, why do we make a curriculum plan, or why do we develop a curriculum? No, we have a set expectations of what we want our learners to be and what we want our learners to attain. So itong mga sets of expectations na ito yung gusto nating ma-attain for them, right? Now it can be attained using the set of curriculums that we have prepared, indicating all the subjects that they have to take along the way. Okay? So, I've already discussed this kanina. Proceed na tayo sa next one. Next one is preparing for teaching and learning. This is episode 9. Time-tested principles of teaching and learning. Effective learning begins with setting clear expectation and learning outcomes. Kaya nga 'di ba minsan iba-iba tayo ng iba-iba tayo ng approach yung mga teachers natin kapag during the first part of our interaction or first sessions tinatanong ni teacher si students kung what are their expectations in this course, no? Or the other way around. Si student ang nagtatanong kay teacher kung ano yung mga i-expect natin sa subject na ito. Okay? But of course, it is important that at the very first part, teacher has to set clearly what is expected. Next is learning is an active process. What I hear, I forget. What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand. Remember, I also showed you the Dale's cone of Edgar Dale's cone, of learning. The more senses you use, mas lalong tumataas yung percentile of retention nito. Also, as mentioned, di ba, if you want to master something, teach it. Learning is a discovery of personal meaning of ideas. Students are given the opportunity to connect what they learn with other concepts learned, with real-world experience, and with their own lives. So, it's an opportunity for us to connect, no? And then lastly is learning is a cooperative and collaborative process. Again, we shy away from the thought of competition. We are already at an era wherein collaboration is in. Okay. In determining instructional objectives, we already talked about these 3 types of writing objectives kanina. We have cognitive domain, papasok dyan yung Bloom's taxonomy, Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy. Affective domain, we have David Kraftwall. And for the psychomotor domain, we have Elizabeth Simpson. Okay, we've already discussed this in the curriculum development discussion kanina. Mga overlapping concepts lang naman. But same pa rin, same lang din naman. Okay. So when you develop a lesson plan, again, we want to put these three domains of objective, no? Pero hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon nakokompleto natin yung tatlo. But it's okay, no? It's okay. Wag nating ipilit. Okay? Because there are other lessons that will cover the yung kakulangan, no, ng isang topic over the other. Okay. So we have types of teaching, approaches, methods, and strategies. Direct. So this is a teacher-centered approach. Teacher-centered, controlled, teacher transits information direct to the learners. This is an approach on lecture method. But don't get me wrong, no, lecture method is still effective. Baka lagi na lang nating dinadahilan na activity na lang ipapagawa natin sa students natin kasi kailangan hands-on sila. But there are topics, take note, that has to be teacher-centered. That has to be a teacher-centered approach. Dapat kay teacher nang gagaling yung knowledge kasi kapag puro ka pa activity or puro ka pa reporting, anong nangyayari? Anong nangyayari kapag puro ka activity and puro ka na lang puro ka activity and puro ka na lang report? Pa-report sa mga estudyante mo, anong nangyayari? May possibility na hindi na pa-process yung knowledge, hindi na pa-process yung information. Later on, makapag-develop pa sila ng misinformation. Kaya dapat, wag nating tanggalin ang lecture method. Kasi ano pa rin yan it's still an approach. In fact, it worked for so many years. You cannot really remove it, no? So, importante pa rin yan. Indirect learner-centered approach, learner controls, student search for information. This is good. Good ito for experimentalists, ng mga teachers, mga mahilig magpa-activity, mahilig OBE, ganun. Okay lang din yun. I have nothing against it. It's effective naman. Again, it talks about appropriateness. All about appropriateness. Dapat yung ipapagawa mong activity, dapat appropriate yon sa learning content and the expected learning outcomes. Kasi baka mamaya, nagpapa-activity ka, hindi naman pala appropriate doon sa iyong lesson and appropriate doon sa iyong learning content. Others, no, madami pa pong iba-ibang ways. We have brainstorming, constructivist teaching, cooperative learning, and we also have distance learning. No, these are the other methods that can be used by the teacher. No, okay, ito ulit yung Cone of Experience by Edgar Dale. Okay, the more senses you use, the higher the retention. Next is the instructional cycle, no? The instructional cycle, guiding principles in the selection and the use of the teaching methods. Learning is an active process. Take note, learning is an active process. Hindi po ito passive process. Dapat two-way yan. Dapat si student nagre-respond sa ginagawa ni teacher and vice versa din. Ngayon, puro ang sabi nila, ang active process dapat si student lang yung may ginagawa, si teacher nagfa-facilitate. Well, technically, pwede yun, pero hindi sa lahat ng pagkakataon. Active process also tells that teacher has to play a role on lecture and then mag-i-involve si students sa participation. Kasi, again, no, pag nagpa-report ka, dapat ready ka as a teacher. Alam nyo, mas madali nga mas okay mag-lecture actually pag si teacher nagturo kasi yun yung expected outcome yung tinuturo niya. Pero kapag nagpa-report yan si teacher, may tendencies pa na magkaroon ng misinformation na ma-create or makuha yung bata. Kailangan ma-facilitate yun ni teacher. Pag-iisipan, kailangan pag nagpa-report ka, pag ikaw teacher nagpa-report ka, dapat handa kang mag-clarify ng concept. Handa kang mag-deepen at mag-process ng concept kasi support ka. Kailangan gabayan mo yung mga magre-report mong estudyante. Hindi yung magpapa-report ka, iiwan mo lang sila. Hindi po ganun yun, okay? The more senses that are involved, the more better the learning. Non-threatening atmosphere enhances learning. Don't get me wrong, minsan may time din talaga na effective yung mga terror na teachers. No? But yeah, in the 21st century, we encourage a non-threatening environment because mas gusto ko to kasi mas gusto ko yung inaaral ko kasi masaya ko, ganun. I'm not threatened in the atmosphere. In fact, it is an atmosphere of growth. Emotion has the power to increase retention and learning. Emotion, either takot o saya. Pansinin ninyo ano yung mga pinaka-naaalala nyong score nyo, yung pinaka-mababa kayo at yung pinaka-mataas kayo. Nasa gitna, hindi nyo naaalala. Ganon din sa learning content. Minsan maaalala mo yung time na ginisa ka ng prof mo or ng teacher mo ng tanong in the middle of reporting. And then yun yung babalikan mo, yun yung aaralin mo. Diba? Nagkakaroon ka ng interest doon because of that. Okay? So again, emotion has the power to increase retention. Kaya nga, di ba, sinabi ko din kanina, affective domain. Huwag nating ina-underestimate nila si affective domain. Well, in fact, si affective domain can amplify the importance of the cognitive domain. If the students find essence of the content, mas lalo niyang aaralin yun at mas lalo niyang iintindihin. Good teaching goes beyond the recall of information. Learning is meaningful when it comes connected to the students' everyday life, and an integration of teaching approach is far more effective than teaching isolated bits of information. Some effective reaction techniques, ito lumalabas ito sa sa LET. I encountered this question before. So, some effective reaction techniques, anong gagawin mo sa mga sa sagot ng mga estudyante mo? First is other option is provide acceptance and corrective feedbacks. So, if the answer is correct, you provide an acceptance. If it is not correct, you provide a corrective feedback. You cannot immediately say no, you're wrong. Pero pag math yan, syempre pwede mo sabihing mali, pero pwede mong tulungan yung bata kung paano niya makuha yung tamang sagot. Give appropriate and sincere praise. May praisal tayo. Congratulations, no? Pwedeng external, extrinsic or ano, sa lower years, no, extrinsic ang approach. Dati naalala ko may practice teacher kami, may ano siya, laging may dala-dalang candy. So nagre-recite talaga kami magkakaklase para lang doon sa candy na bit-bit ng practice teacher ng teacher namin pag nagpakaklase siya. So that could be one. Repeating, expounding, and explaining the answers. So example, pag nagsagot yung student sa question mo, you can elaborate his or her answer. That's a good response. Rephrasing or asking follow-up questions. This is also good. O kaya naman redirecting questions. Ito, redirecting questions. If a student asks you, you can redirect it to the class kung sino yung makakasagot. Pero take note, wag kayong magdadanggel. Wag niyong iiwan sa ere. Baka mamaya, tinanong ka ng estudyante, tapos binato mo sa kapwa niya estudyante, sumagot yung estudyante kahit mali yung sagot, tinanggap mo pa rin. Hindi po pwede yun. Bawal ka po mang-iwan sa ere, ha? And of course, encourage through nonverbal behaviors. Okay, nandyan din yung mga ano yun, facial expression plays a good role also in determining kung naiintindihan ba talaga ng bata o hindi yung tinuturo mo. Okay, now let's go to episode 11. Episode 11 is utilizing teaching learning resources and ICT. According to UNESCO Competency Framework for Teachers, this is version 3, ICT CFT version 3 of 2018. First is understanding ICT in education. We have to accept that ICT is already part of our educational experience. Hindi na natin pwedeng tanggalin yung computer, no? It can also be helpful in curriculum and assessment. In fact, kung walang computer, kung walang ICT, no? Ano kaya nangyari sa atin nung nangyari yung pandemic, 'di ba? We cannot survive. We cannot survive. Education cannot survive if no, it would have to pause for a while. Pedagogy, kaya nga inculcated na ang technology sa pedagogy, no, sa TPAC. Okay? It should be incorporated in our approach in teaching. Application of digital skills, organization and administration, and teaching professional learning. You know, we're very thankful that we have technology today nung nangyari yung pandemic. Kasi kung wala, baka hindi mag-survive yung education system natin. Now, there are different levels of teachers in ICT skills. Which level are you if you're going to be a teacher? First level, level 1, knowledge acquisition. Anong example ng knowledge acquisition? Marunong mag-search si teacher sa Google. That's knowledge acquisition. ICT skill yon. You get knowledge. Next level is you are able to use the internet to look for the information you need and be able to filter which is more important. So, in the pool of knowledge, sa level 1 kasi, may access ka lang sa pool of knowledge. Sa level 2, may access ka na and at the same time, you are able to pinpoint or determine which are credible and reliable information. And then lastly, level 3, knowledge creation, you are already able to input your information or input knowledge in the Internet of Things na kaya mo na din mag-posts ng mga forms of knowledge like publish journal researches on the internet, no. So yon. So at which level are you? Na ba kayo? Nakapag-contribute na ba kayo sa knowledge creation on ICT ICT skills, no? Are you in level 1, level 2, or level 3? Or hanggang Google lang kayo or GMG lang kayo? Google mo lang, ganyan. 'Di ba? Sana hindi ganoon. Sana tayo ay nasa level 2 or nasa level 3 man lang bilang mga guro. Evaluation of ICT resources. So ito yung key points, no? First is accuracy. Make sure that the information that you are giving or you are uh, that you have no, is first is reliable. Accuracy na dapat reliable ito. Free from error and up to date. Dapat latest information yung pinoprovide natin na information. Appropriateness, again, it should be grade level appropriate. Baka mamaya, tama naman yung tinuturo mo. It's true. No? But is it really appropriate for the grade level that you are teaching? Say for example, if in mathematics, no, you are teaching heavy mathematics, but it's not appropriate for the grade level na kung saan ka. Okay? Clarity, hit the instructional goal agad. Dapat, no, the instructional goal is clear. Dapat may hit agad yun nung ICT resource mo. Kasi baka mamaya magpaligoy-ligoy pa. Completeness contains necessary information. Dapat ang learning resource mo, ICT source mo ay kompleto ang laman na detalye. Okay? Baka mamaya chunk yan kung saan-saan pa nanggaling, hindi reliable. Kung kailangan nga mag-ano ka pa mag primary text ka pa hanapin mo yung reference nung reference mo, 'di ba? Next is motivation, engaging and rewarding, promotes active participation. And then lastly is organization, logically sequenced and seamless. You know what, in the 21st century education, sabi, we are no longer the sole source of knowledge. We are facilitators. But in the current view, ang sabi nung in 2020, teachers are no longer facilitators only. We are also what? We are organizers of knowledge. Because of the large pool of information, kailangan ma-pinpoint natin mga teachers kung ano yung true or false, kung ano yung needed information or needed knowledge, at yun yung ituturo natin. Kasi pwede naman talagang ma-pinpoint mo yung mga tamang information Now that you all know this information, what will you do? You have to organize. Kasama yan, di ba, sa lesson planning natin kanina, that when you determine your content, you have to organize it. Determine the teaching and learning experience, you have to organize it. Kaya ang role ng teacher is no longer to facilitate but to organize knowledge also. Okay? So teachers are no longer sole source of knowledge. We are facilitators and organizers of knowledge. Clear po ba yun? Is this clear, guys? Clear po? Hello? Ayan. Clear. Okay. Now, the Education 4.0, this is a response on the fourth wave of industrial revolution. The following technology trends have huge potential to transform the way we teach and learn. This is according to UNESCO 2018. Again, no, in 2021, Philippines is we already in 2020 we started to enter Education 4.0. We embraced it already. Although nung college pa lang naririnig ko na yung Education 4.0. But Philippines already started to embrace it before pandemic naman, I think 2018, 2019. But then again, last year, no, the Philippines, other countries are already entering Education 5.0. Sabi, kakapasok pa lang namin ng Education 4.0. Bakit ang bilis-bilis, no? But anyway, these are the important considerations, no, in Education 4.0. Sagot kasi ito sa Industrial Revolutions. Yung mga from Industrial Revolution 1.0, may Education 1.0. Laging may kaakibat yung Industrial Rev 2, educational reform. Kasi nga, 'di ba, sinasagot ni education kung ano yung kailangan ni society, no? First is open educational resources. Open educational resources having access of pool of information. So, in this pool of information, teachers, no, we have to transform our resources kasi kung dati teachers have to be one book ahead, ngayon dapat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 books ahead ang teacher, kaya more basa more basa and more aral ang isang guro sa 21st century. Social networks, we have different social media platforms now. The problem with social media platforms is that information is not properly filtered. So may mga fake news na kumakalat na dapat na filter. So again, no, in this access of information, we have to be careful on the knowledge that we are getting and the knowledge that we are generating also. Kasi baka mamaya nag-post ka tapos yun pala mali yung pinost mo, nakalat na. Careful with that, okay? Mobile technologies. This talks about the technologies that we used in education today. The reason why we survive education was because of these mobile technologies. We have cell phone, we have different educational apps. Actually, I have a lot of educational apps in my phone. You can download them. Um, for chemistry, no, you have a downloadable Merck periodic table. Nandiyan na din yung mga laboratory, virtual laboratory apps na meron kami. So we utilize these technologies to continue education. Now, during this pandemic, ginamit din namin yung mga mobile apps na ito in order to facilitate laboratory classes kasi hindi naman hindi naman namin pwedeng pigilan ang offering ng laboratory classes kasi mandated na yun ng boards ng university. So kailangan tuloy-tuloy ang offering ng laboratory classes namin. Hindi namin yun pwedeng itigil. So yeah, we should utilize technology in promoting education. The Internet of Things, okay? Artificial intelligence is also in already. Nandiyan sina Siri, nandiyan sina Alexa, no? There's even a posing question that is asked. Can these artificial intelligence replace teachers? Yes or no? Kaya i-replace ng artificial intelligence ang mga teachers? By the way, do you hear any background noise? Wala naman. Hello, do you hear any background noise?
Wala naman po, sir.
Wala naman. Can artificial intelligence replace teachers? What do you think? Do you think about?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So, actually, no, cognitively, technology or artificial intelligence can replace the role of teacher in giving knowledge. Kaya nga, di ba, yung role natin as sole source of knowledge before naging facilitator and organizers of knowledge na. Pero, yung information kasi na hinihingi, kayang ibigay yan eh. Kaya matutunan niya ng bata, isa-search lang niya yan sa internet, babasahin niya. Pero ang pagiging guro, hindi yan mapapalitan. According to studies, no, it's one of the professions that cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence. Why? Because teaching is humanistic. Diba nga, as humans, we are social beings. So we are intended to communicate, relate to our fellow human beings. Yung capability natin sa sa affective side natin, no, hindi yan kayang i-touch ng technology kahit gaano pa mukhang may emotion yung tone nung technology, it cannot replace us. Well, that is according to the recent studies, no. So as of today, okay, hindi po kayang palitan ng artificial intelligence ang teachers sa profession. Kasi sa totoo lang, may mga professions na at threat na kayang palitan ni artificial intelligence, yung i-replace ni artificial intelligence yung works nila. Virtual and augmented reality, dito papasok yung simulations, no? Ginagamit nila ito sa mga virtual laboratories. Big data. Coding is also the key, sabi nila. Coding is the new language of teachers. So if you are a teacher and you know how to code, good for you. Kasi that will be our future language daw bilang mga teachers. Hindi pa ako marunong nun. Okay. Ethics and privacy protection. And of course, innovative future education. Everything that we're doing, again, is for the betterment of the education system. Okay. Questions so far? Before we proceed to assessment. None. Okay. So when we go to assessment, ayan, assessment for and as learning. Pag sinabi natin assessment for and as learning, this is formative assessment. When we talk about formative assessment, this is done while learners are being taught during the instructions. Now, so assessment for learning, merong tatlong types of assessment done before and during the instruction. Ano-ano itong tatlong ito? Una, placement assessment. Placement assessment is done prior the instructions. Its purpose is to assess the needs of the learners to have a basis in planning for relevant instructions. Teachers use this assessment to know what their students are bringing into the learning situation and use this as a starting point for the instructions. The results of this assessment place the students in a specific learning groups to facilitate teaching and learning. So one of the examples of a placement assessment is what NCAI, 'di ba? It allows you to determine which program you might take in your college years, no, based on your performance. Okay? Another one is entrance exams. So it's also a placement, and it's also a placement assessment. If you pass, then maybe you are qualified based on the standards set by the academic institution. The other one is the formative assessment done during the instructions. Sorry, formative assessment. Uh, this is where the teacher continuously monitors the student's level of attainment of the learning objective. So continuous yung monitoring ito, immediate feedback. The results of this assessment are communicated clearly and promptly to the students for them to know their strengths and weaknesses and progress of their learning. The third one is diagnostic, done during instructions. So, don't get me wrong ha, diagnostic formative is done during the instructions. Diagnostic can be done before and during ito. Okay, this is used to determine the student's recurring or persistent difficulties. Example is pre-test, kaya yung mga pop quiz before mag-umpisa sa lecture. It searches for the underlying courses of the students, learning problems that do not respond to the first aid treatment. It helps formulate plan for detailed remedial instructions. The next one is assessment as learning. This is done for teachers to understand and perform well the role of assessing of and for and of learning. It requires teachers to undergo training on how to assess learning and be equipped with the following competencies needed in performing their works as assessors. So, as assessors, you have to be familiar with these three. Outcomes-based teaching learning on the basis of outcomes ang remarks dito. Competency-based teaching naman, competencies ang basis nito. Teaching by objectives, objectives ang basis ng iyong assessment. So teachers must ensure that the intended outcome, competency, and objective is attained at the end of the lesson. So while still the process of teaching, we have to check the learner's understanding and progress. If the learner failed to understand the prerequisite knowledge and skills, we reteach until learners master them. So kaya tayo nagpapa-activities, no, and then post lecture activities tayo in order to determine if we have to continue or i-reteach natin yung content. Pero hindi naman pwedeng reteach ka ng reteach. Ha? May limit lang po ang reteach natin at may coverage lang ang pwede nating i-reteach. May approach minsan na ginagamit which is called 3-2-1 model of assessment. 3-2-1 model of feedbacking. Three things you learned, two things you are confused, three things you learned, two things you want to learn more, and one thing that you are most confused about. Na kukunin mo yung frequency ng pinaka-confused sila, tapos yun lang yung i-reteach mo. Okay, that's a technique that you can consider. Assessment of learning. Assessment of learning done after the instructions referred as summative assessment. This is used to what? Certify what students know and can do and the level of their proficiency and competencies. Its result reveals whether or not instructions have successfully achieved the curriculum outcomes. And it is expressed as remark, numerical man yun or letter remarks. Kaya kasi summative na ito. The result which are communicated with the students, parents, and teachers and the other stakeholders for the decision making. This is already the evaluation, no? Decision making na ito kung pass ba yung bata o hindi. It is also a powerful factor that could pave the way to educational reform. Um, say for example, if most of the students passed, no, if most of the student passed, does it necessarily mean that they learned from your session? Does it necessarily mean that you're effective? You still need to check your assessment. Baka naman dinalian mo lang yung assessment mo para madaming pumasa at para masabi na magaling kang magturo. Okay? O kaya naman, ang hirap-hirap ng exam mo, kalahati bumagsak. Again, we are not making exams or assessment to intimidate our students. Ha? May proper way po tayo ng paggawa ng assessment. Teachers must be able to what? First, determine the alignment of the assessment tools. Dapat aligned yung assessment tool na kinreate mo based on the expected learning outcome from the course. Critique traditional and authentic assessment tools. Again, we still consider the traditional, the pen and paper assessment and the authentic assessment tool. Hindi pwedeng puro ka na lang pa-OBE ng pa-OBE nang hindi mo naman pala nadideepen yung content ng bata. Task for learning in the context of the established guidelines on the test constructions. Evaluate ng traditional and assessment tools include scoring rubrics. Ngayon, kung ikaw naman ay nagpa-OBE, no, make sure that the assessment that you created, no, assessment tool that you created using rubrics is proper and appropriate. Examine different types of rubrics and relate them to the assessment of the student's learning. Construct assessment questions and understand as able to explain the table of specifications. I hope naturo na din sa inyo, no? Marunong na naman kayong magsulat ng TOS natin. Ang TOS natin, ang TOS po, hindi lang po basis on cognitive domain, ha? Ang basis po ng TOS, lahat yan ay cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain, no? Pero more on affective and psychomotor ang mga pen and paper tests. Affective and cognitive ang mga pen and paper tests. Okay. Pero as much as possible, again, hindi pwede din lahat ng tanong mo HOTS. Baka mamaya kaka-emphasize niyo ng HOTS, nakakalimutan ninyo yung importance ng LOTS questions. Students cannot generate knowledge, cannot analyze, cannot evaluate, or cannot create knowledge if they cannot remember the basic principles behind it, if they do not understand the basic principles behind it. So HOTS is important, but it is also important as to LOTS. Okay. Ito, mabilis na lang po ito. Actually, reflective na lang po ito. Galing po ito sa field study, OB and PPST book. Again, the contents is from the OB and PPST based book, Field Study 1 by Dr. Lucas Borabo, Bilbao, and Dr. Corpus. These people are in the teachers board, no? So, medyo ano na lang to, medyo sharing na lang din. Quick na lang ito, no? For the episode 14, the teacher as a person and as a professional. I think familiar naman tayo, no? My teacher, my hero. This is the tagline of teachers. So, to be a teacher requires a lot of personal and professional qualities. Ang daming demands ng pagiging isang teacher. Okay, so personal qualities and teachers and personal qualities of teachers and description. So una, lives with dignity and exemplifies self-respect, integrity, and self-discipline. A teacher is what? Honest, has integrity, self-respect, self-discipline, likewise respected by students and teachers and the community. This is somehow related to the Article 2 and Article 3 of the Code of Ethics of for professional teachers. Takes care of one's physical and emotional and mental well-being. So teacher is physically, emotionally, and mentally healthy, clean and neat, dresses appropriately, and pleasant in words and in action. Okay? Madali ito? Madali ba itong gawin? Actually, madali itong gawin kapag nasa character mo na. Mahihirapan ka lang talaga kapag hindi ito yung character mo. Okay? But yes, it is a very challenging task to be. Since you are expected to be role model of the society, you have to perform these tasks as well. Lives a life inspired by spiritual principles and beliefs, sorry. This teacher behaves according to the personal spiritual belief, depending on, again, this is depending on your religion, no? That are not contrary to the norms. Okay, these are social norms, mores, morals, and tradition of the community. Exhibit deep knowledge and understand across the discipline. So dapat unang-una sa lahat, no, dapat meron kang expertise ng iyong learning content. No, this teacher is able to acquire new knowledge, skills, and values, has the ability, as I've mentioned kanina, learn, relearn, and unlearn. Okay, you have to unfill the cup in order to fill it in again. Recognize own strengths with humility. So this teacher sets high goals for him herself, but remains humble and willing to share success. Confident in performing tasks, but never considered to be above others. Okay, take note of this, teachers. Huwag niyo pong iisipin na yung subject na tinuturo mo ay dahil yung subject na tinuturo mo ay tingin mo mas mahirap, mas matalino ka na o mas magaling ka na kumpara sa ibang mga guro. Sa loob ng paaralan, pantay-pantay kayong lahat mga guro. Mapaano pa man ang academic rank ng bawat isa, lahat kayo ay guro. Isa lang ang kliyente ninyo. At isa lang ang trabaho nyo. Ang trabaho nyo magturo. Maging magaling na guro. Okay? Hindi lamang pagtuturo. Perseveres in the challenging situations. This teacher is calm in the midst of chaos. Ang hirap kaya maging calm. Lalo na kapag nagkakaroon na ng no? But you have to be calm, remain steadfast under pressure, does not easily give up, and adjust to different situations. Daming personal qualities pa lang to, may professional qualities pa later. Demonstrate a natural action to work together with others. This teacher volunteers tasks for others, willing to share and extend help and accept responsibilities, and tolerant to others. Tolerant ba kayo? Teachers, dapat tolerant tayo. So those are the tasks, no? Those are the do's of a teacher based on the personal qualities. Now let's go to professional qualities. Professional qualities, una is abide by the code of ethics for professional teachers. This teacher practices the rule of conduct of being a teacher as indicated in the code of ethics. Master subject matter to be taught. O syempre, hindi ka naman siguro gagraduate doon sa academic program mo nang kahit paano ay nang hindi mo alam kung ano yung ituturo mo, di ba? So you have to have a mastery of your learning content. So masters, naka-close and open parenthesis, updates. Kasi hindi naman perennial yung knowledge na information na meron sa'yo. So nagbabago yan. You have to update that. Updates oneself on educational trends, policies, and curricula. Anong gagawin mo? So as teachers, kailangan mo talagang umattend ng seminars, ng trainings, ng workshops. Dapat kahit hindi mandated ng school, dapat gagawin mo na yon out of your interests. Okay? But of course, as academic institutions, you have to mga school leaders naman, you have to support your your teachers. No, you have to allow them to attend trainings and support them on their workshops. And if they are attending graduate programs, give them an appropriate loading, di ba? Builds a support network with parents and community. May role again ang teachers sa community na tinalakay natin kanina, and meron din tayong Parents Teachers Association that parents are the first teachers and at home, no, and the teachers are the second parents at school. So dapat magampanan 'yun ng isang guro. Demonstrates knowledge, understanding of the characteristics and needs of diverse learners. This teacher has substantial knowledge of the characteristics and needs of the learners, plans and implements school curriculum responsively. This teacher plans, prepares, and implements and innovates the day-to-day curriculum with a view in the mind that learners will learn. So lagi niyong iisipin, no, lagi kang may everyday na papasok ka sa classroom mo, lagi kang may expected outcome na dapat yun yung ma-attain mo within the teaching and learning experience, at dapat hindi yung kwento ng buhay mo yung maiuwi ng bata. Uses teaching methods to facilitate effective learning. This teacher practices different ways of teaching and approaches which are appropriate to the learners and subject matter. Take note, always ulit-ulitin ko po yun kasi kasama po yun sa characteristics, no? Appropriateness. Always consider appropriateness. No matter how beautiful your lesson is, if the learning experience is not appropriate, definitely teaching and learning process will not happen effectively, meaning walang meaningful learning. Design, select, and utilize appropriate assessment and strategies and tools. So dapat again yung gagamitin mong assessment appropriate doon sa nakaangklang objectives and learning content. Baka mamaya yung activity mo ay definition, ang hinihingi mo ang activity mo or ang assessment mo is identification, pero yung nasa lesson plan mo ay just determine lang. I mean, multiple choice, hindi identification. Provides safe, secure, and fair physical, psychological, psychological environment that foster learning. This teacher arranges and manages the classroom to provide safe, secure, and psychological environment that supports and encourages learning. So again, ulitin ko, a classroom should be a safe space from discrimination. Any forms of discrimination should not be welcome inside the classroom. Serves beyond call of duty. Ito yung malala talaga to. On call ka. This teacher does tasks and works even beyond the official time when needed. So, kailangan mo mag-MC sa graduation, sige. Kailangan mo mag-stay for the accreditation, sige. Kailangan mo magbantay for election, sige. Pero addendum, no? If you are very vocal with your sa nalalapit na election, if you are very vocal with your candidate, you're also supposedly not allowed to be member of the electoral board committee. So, ayun lang naman. Pero you are allowed, again, you are allowed to express whoever you want to vote. Okay. So, local teacher, I already discussed this kanina. Nadaanan na natin ito. Ito, hindi ko to na-discuss kanina. No? So, the characteristics of the 21st century. First is sustainable. Education for future. When we talk about sustainability, always consider the next 7 generation. Okay? So education for the future, iisipin mo pa rin palagi, no, kung ano yung magiging state ng education system in the future if you do this and you do that. Equity, democratization of access and inclusive education. You allow access to education because again, education is free. Using EFA, di ba? Education for all. But, each student have free access. Relevance, functionality, and meaningfulness, or its utility. Magagamit mo ba yung information na makukuha mo? Meaningful ba yun? It could be meaningful if it is on the basis of experience. Quality, excellence, and effectiveness. Okay? We already talked about this kanina. Okay, talakay na din natin tong local. Yun lang. We have to be global thinkers, no? We have to be global thinkers while maintaining our local identity. Then lastly, no, the episode 16 on teachers' philosophy of education, we are beneficiaries of the rich philosophical heritage passed on to us by the great thinkers of the past and of the present. So we have the different foundations of education, philosophical foundations. No, so we have three major philosophies: idealism, realism, pragmatism. At meron ding mga na-generate from these three. So galing dito sa tatlong to, nabuo yung ibang philosophical thoughts, kagaya ng perennialism. Perennialism is a product of idealism and pragmatism. Essentialism is a product of idealism and realism. Progressivism is realism and pragmatism, no, and so on. So we have existentialism and social reconstructionism. These are philosophies that we can see or we can observe in the educational system. Again, sinabi doon kanina, no, mahalaga lang po talaga ay balance. Wala pong school or subject na iisa lang yung philosophy behind it. Meron lang predominant. Ganon din tayo mga teachers. On teachers' philosophy of education, lahat tayo may kani-kaniya tayong filosofiya sa pagtuturo. Lahat tayo, even I, no, I'm still crafting my own educational philosophy based on the subjects that I'm teaching, based on the situations that we are experiencing right now. My educational philosophy is moving. Okay? Now, hindi ko totoo itatalakay sa inyo kasi no, as teachers, we have freedom to choose whichever philosophy we want. But take note, my dear future teachers, no, that your teaching philosophy will tell a lot about you on how you will become a teacher, on how you will teach your content, how you will teach your subject. So you need to you really need to properly think and reflect on what is the most dominant philosophy you have. Again, I don't encourage you to compartmentalize yourself in one type of philosophy, but you have to allow it to be correlated with other philosophies as well. Pero dapat identified mo na kung ano yung predominant na principle or philosophy na nasa sa'yo. So, having said that, thank you for participating. Please stop the bled this year if you're planning, or next year. Congratulations again to your university for a good performance, no, for a great performance in the previous LET results. I hope that the upcoming results of your LET would be would be better. Okay? Now, this is a three session meeting kasi ito, no. Yes, I have also prepared, I will also prepare or craft rather the retool, the questionnaires. May mga questionnaires ako na isi-send. I will be submitting it to Dean. A lot of questions there is from my discussion, and those questions are also from LET questions from that I've encountered and I've also seen from the previous books. So ayun lang, siguro tip lang, you need to keep on practicing answering questions. Create a mind map. Pag Prof Ed, kailangan talaga marunong kayo mag-mind map kasi ang Prof Ed hindi memorization eh. Ang Prof Ed talagang ano yan, kailangan familiar ka. Kasi lahat ng tanong sa sagot, lahat ng sagot sa tanong sa Prof Ed, lahat ay tama. You just need to put your feet at the shoes of the test developer. Kung anong principle, anong keyword yung hinahanap niya para masagutan niyo yung tanong. Okay? So, Yeah, that's simply the ano. Pero sa totoo lang, Prof Ed, for me, Prof Ed is the most difficult part of my life experience. Because again, lahat ng sagot tama. Kailangan mo lang hanapin which one is the best answer. 'Di ba? Which one is the best answer. So, ano pa ba? Yeah, so that's it po. Do you have the floor is open if you have any questions or clarifications. By the way, if you want to go back with my more detailed discussion on curriculum development and a more detailed discussion on field study 1, no, meron po akong pre-recorded lectures that is posted also on my YouTube channel, which is called JD's Corner. Maybe I could also send it with you para ma-access ninyo, no. Para makita lang din ninyo, okay? If you are sorry. Thank you. So naka-upload na po yung uh, yung YT ng FS1. You can watch the series no on FS1. If you have questions, no, sumasagot naman ako doon. And also, ano pa ba? Madami na din natulungan yung channel na yon. If you have questions po, please feel free to ask question now. The floor is open. Actually, I opted to use an approach wherein I will just show the question and then you will answer. Kaso kasi ang mangyari noon, i-condition ko lang kayo to pass the exam. Ayoko naman na ganun lang ang mangyari, di ba? I want you guys to have a certain level of mastery and understanding of the subject per se. Okay? So medyo maaga po tayo ngayon, hindi na
Sir,
nag-overtime.
I think they do not have questions anymore po. So everything is clear na po. So thank you, sir, and see you po for the BEd subjects.
Okay.
So enjoy the rest of the day po, sir, and goodbye to all po.
Thank you po. Thank you and God bless everyone. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you po, sir. Thank you po,
Salamat
Dean.
po, sir.
Vote wisely, guys, ha.